they're very nuanced. So a lot of people just want to make them black and white, like, oh, tariffs come, prices raise, that gets passed on to the consumer, and that's always not the case. It always depends.
You know, a lot of manufacturing today is relatively like low skill compared to the US. Like basically any country, you know, can make clothing. A lot of other countries can build cars. Not many other countries have an educated and productive enough workforce to make iPhones.
There's also studies showing that when you raise corporate tax, prices go up 1.7%.
I mean, I don't
think you have the same benefit of, do you think it's the same thing when you're raising corporate taxes when you're tariffing these imports as well?
There's another reason I think they don't do a good job of protecting jobs, and that's because they also hurt U.S. exports, right? So
then also the middle-class family income raised on average $6,000 during Trump's 4 years.
Yeah, but Trump didn't have the negative effects of COVID. Like,
I'm against, obviously, kids consenting to gender-affirming care. I don't think they are old enough to be doing that because they don't know the effects on their body.
It was for Pence to break the Electoral Count Act. This is not in dispute.
Yeah,
Pence said it was going to break the Electoral Count Act. John Eastman said it was going to break the Electoral Count Act. Kenneth Chesebro said it was going to break the Electoral Count Act. Everyone knew this broke the Electoral Count Act. Eastman thought it was okay to break the Electoral Count Act because he thought it was unconstitutional. He wanted Jerome Powell to resign. Like, he publicly said, like, I wouldn't stop Jerome Powell from resigning. You know, I think he said he constantly harassed him publicly, you know, saying other countries have lower interest rates. Why can't we lower our interest rate? Yeah, I think that's absolutely horrible they did that, yes. Shows he has no respect for the independence of the Fed, which is a very important thing. If you want to see more content like this, I would really appreciate you liking and subscribing. It really helps with the algorithm. And make sure to check out the Discord and other social links in the description. So do you want to just tell my chat who you are, where they can find you?
Yeah, so I am, my name's Daniel Tanious. My socials are Brutally Honest Help. I do wellness coaching. I went to college. I have a BA in psych, a master's in counseling. I'm on here because I was on the Jubilee video, debated Destiny on the...
You're, I can't hear you right now.
Oh shit. Sorry, I got like a phone call, so just...
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah, so I was on a Jubilee video, and what's your actual name, by the way?
My real name is Jared.
Yeah, Jared, okay, yeah. And then, yeah, Jared messaged me, asked me if we wanted to discuss the economy and maybe some other things and see if we could have a conversation / debate. Do you want to know anything about the Jubilee video or no?
What would I should have come up with questions about that before. Yeah, you were on Jubilee. How'd you get on Jubilee? How'd you manage to do that?
So basically, Jubilee's based in California, like a lot of their studios. So I applied on their newsletter for other random videos. Like one just came out, like odd one out I was in, like a ranked I was in. And when you fill out like these questionnaires to be on these videos, they ask you, oh, what is like your political, like party or whatever. And every time I always just put in the middle, leaning more right. That's what I always put. I never put like a certain party. So that was just kind of what I put. And then they had the 30 versus 30 middle ground. I don't know if you saw 30 versus 30 middle ground.
No, I didn't watch that one, no.
Okay, so basically they messaged me and asked me if I want to be on that, and I told them, I don't know too much about politics. Like, I'd rather not be on it. I'm not going to be a good fit for this episode. They're like, no, just interview and we'll see how you do. And I went on it, and they did the 30v30, and I studied for like 2 weeks. I was like, I don't know shit about politics. I got to learn so I don't sound dumb on this middle ground. And I went on, and the way the setup was, I didn't say one single word for the whole video. For like whole 3-hour video that's on YouTube, I didn't say one word. And I was just like, damn, I learned all this like stuff to try to defend like a certain position. And I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna apply for another one. So I just applied for the Sourronded one, and then they just picked me. And the funny thing is, when I went there, I was like, I'm not gonna debate Destiny. Like, he's a great debater. Even if I disagree with him, he's so good at what he does. And no one wanted to debate the economy. So I was just like, because it's like, I guess the hardest one to debate if you're on a Republican. So I was like, you know, I'll just try it, see how I do, and I just went up and then talked, and then that's about it.
Yeah. So I think you didn't get to talk to them for too long. Unfortunately, they cut you off. Okay.
Yeah.
Even though you're the best one, by the way, because you're the only one that replied to my DMs. Okay. So.
Oh really?
Yeah, I think I didn't DM everyone, but I DM'd a few people. You were the good one. Okay. So.
Okay. Thanks.
I guess like one of the things you were talking about were tariffs, obviously, because I think Destiny said, you know, Trump's economic plan was bad, it's going to cause inflation, and one of his points for that was tariffs. So I'm curious, like, today Trump like put out on Truth Social, he literally said like he wants 25% tariffs on everything coming from Mexico and Canada. I'm curious, like, what are our general feelings about that?
So it's not universal right now. It's at 25 from Canada and Mexico.
Well, that's what he said today. I think he said other things that suggest universal tariffs, but I'm using this to like gauge where we feel, where we are.
So honestly, my feelings on tariffs or my thoughts on tariffs is they're very nuanced. So a lot of people just want to make them black and white, like, oh, tariffs come, prices raise, that gets passed on to the consumer, and that's always not the case. It always depends on the competitiveness within the product. The company wants to remain competitive, sometimes a lower profit margins, or prices will range or increase in the short term and eventually stagger down either when they bring production back to the US or they still want to remain competitive. Because at the end of the day, when a price goes up, someone's just going to go to the next product and find something cheaper. So the fact is that the saying is like, oh, no matter what, you're just going to be paying more. And that's not the case for every single thing. I do think like specific rate quotas for tariffs are better. So that means like, obviously you probably already know, if like say you're importing 1,000 tractors and it's at a 10% rate, and then once you want to import 2,000 tractors, then the last 1,000 gets moved up to 20% tariff. So I think those are a lot more smarter tariffs where you're at a rate quota, so they can't just overload us with all the imports, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean that makes I obviously disagree with the justification for having them. I guess I guess that I can see the reasoning behind it. So the first thing I can see your point. Like you know, sometimes businesses will reduce their profit margin if they are tariffed. Sometimes they will. Sometimes people will just buy a different product. They'll buy a substitute for that product. I guess the first point I would say that there's basically two things. There are two things that you do there. Well, one, I'll say, like, even a company decreasing its profit margin, if that didn't have to happen, it can be a bad thing. Like that's essentially deadweight loss. But secondly, like tariffs basically increase domestic demand for a product, right? That's their whole point, which can actually increase the price of because you're increasing demand, you're increasing the price of things produced here as well. This happened with like washing machines. Not only did washing machines in China get more expensive, washing machines here got more expensive because there was more demand for them here. And then secondly,
$86, correct?
Yeah, I think, yeah. And then secondly, you reduce. I mean, I was referencing in general tariffs. Yeah. But you also reduce price competition. Like the whole point of tariffs is protectionism. You protect some industries. So basically, you know, we can imagine like if I'm a farmer, I'm competing against the other farmer across the road, and with free trade, I'm also competing against the farmer in China. If I'm suddenly protected from that farmer in China, I'm only competing with the farmer across the road, and that reduces price competition, which can let me increase prices as well. Yeah. So
now are you just against tariffs across the board, just so I kind of gauge where you're at?
So, I mean, I'm against like 90% of tariffs, but I think like the easiest place to start is usually, how do we feel about tariffs on like literally everything? I think the only time tariffs can be justified is if there's a national security concern that justifies the economic cost. But usually where I start is, how do we just feel about blanket tariffs, everything coming across the border?
Personally, I don't like universal tariffs. So I'll be completely honest. So I'm not going to be one of those like conservative people that vote for Trump that everything on the right side completely agree with. Like I already told you, a lot of my things is in the middle, and I'm just have a little bit more right leaning on certain subjects. But yeah, I don't think universal tariffs are going to be the best move, but I also don't think it's feasible. Like, I don't see it happening, but I could be wrong, to be completely honest.
I don't know if I would put a high probability of Trump doing literally universal tariffs on literally everything. I imagine Congress would get mad at him, and I imagine a court would probably strike it down because the president can only do it if it's like a national security thing. I do think Trump will do way higher amount of tariffs than Biden would, though. So I guess what are the what are the industries for that you would want a tariff? Like what goods?
Can't be a world super.
Thank you for the $5. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I don't know,
His tariffs are
I mean, we did have the ones on
if they
electric
don't
cars,
engage
but
in
everyone
US
have
GDP.
on solar panels. I think it's just, it depends on each guy. I mean, you probably know more than me. Which ones would you suggest if you were to put tariffs on? Would you suggest? Because I don't know which ones I would.
So the only goods I would support tariffs on are like pretty grave national security concerns, and I would really only support them against China and not our allies. So I would say, you know, semiconductors, it can make sense because that's very important for military. Batteries as well. Batteries like going drones, which are like the big military, thing right now. Everyone's using drones. Iran is using drones. The Houthis use drones. So I think those two things. Solar panels, there's kind of a justification. I don't think there's a very good justification for them, but China does subsidize its solar panels, and I can kind of understand the reasoning behind that. But what are the so my position there would be the economic cost is accounted for by the national security benefit. A lot of times when I talk about this, though, it feels like other people basically don't think that there's a big economic cost. So I'm curious, what do you think? If we tariff, what's the justification for tariffing some industries? Is it jobs? Is it because trade's unfair? What's the justification for that?
Well, I mean, we do. So China has tariffs on us for our imported goods. Most European nations have tariffs on us for our imported goods. So if we're back, we should honestly first match those, because it's not free trade if we're paying to import our goods in those countries. So there's no longer free trade. So if it's not going to be free trade to those countries, I think matching those tariffs with whatever products, at least if you want to do a percentile for those nations. And then what was the second part of your question?
I was just asking, what should we tariff, and then what's the justification for doing so?
Well, I agree with the national security. So, the semiconductors, I do think solar panels. I know they were tariffing chips for a little bit, right?
I think we do still tariff chips. We still do chips. Yeah, I think we also subsidize chips here, though. But yeah,
I agree that anything that's a national security threat should be tariffed, and then there should be industries where if we're lacking in the U.S., those goods should be tariffed to promote people bringing back manufacturing in the U.S. So it could be. I like more targeted tariffs than a universal, to be transparent with you.
Sure. So I guess seems like we agree on the national security thing. So on the manufacturing thing, I guess to me, the reason why manufacturing can be important is also a national security issue. We might want factories because we want the ability to build a lot of things. I don't think manufacturing, or even jobs, I don't believe tariffs protect jobs. We can get into that if you want to. But I don't think manufacturing is good in and of itself. And I think, a lot of manufacturing today is relatively low skill compared to the U.S. Basically any country, can make clothing. A lot of other countries can build cars. Not many other countries have an educated and productive enough workforce to make iPhones. So I think there's a good reason why we specialize in making iPhones, or insurance. We specialize in a lot of these service sector things. I think there's good reasons that we do that, because that's what we have the technical term is comparative advantage in. That's what is most efficient for us to produce.
Now, sorry, I lost. Why did this tab close? So I was trying to look up the tariffs and it closed. So my thing is, you don't believe that U.S. manufacturing is important in any sense, really, unless it's iPhones, just to be clear?
Unless it's a national security thing. the reason manufacturing can be good is because you want to have the ability to manufacture, shells, artillery shells, things like that. I don't think it's good in and of itself.
Do you think we're short on low-skilled workers in the U.S.? Like, do you think our low-skilled workers can't match what we're sending overseas? Could you say that we don't need to send either making clothes because it's low-skilled workers? Do you think we're at a shortage of low-skilled workers in the U.S.?
I don't think we have a shortage of low-skilled workers in the U.S., but to the extent that we might, the better thing to do would just be to increase educational attainment and not to artificially hinder technology growth. How do
you hinder the growth if you're having? Because you already have low-skilled workers here. So your solution to that is to increase education so they're no longer low-skilled workers?
Essentially, yeah. That'd be preferable to using tariffs to bring back low-skilled manufacturing.
And so you would do that how? Like, what is a plan that you would have to bring education to low skill, or have them even go and attend these either trade schools to learn these either higher earning jobs?
Well, I think you should probably subsidize college. You should probably have free schools, free public schooling, which we already have, things of that nature. I think are big things.
Well, when a person graduates high school, are they considered a low-skilled worker?
If they only graduate high school, for the U.S. at least, yeah, it's a low-skilled worker, I would probably say, yeah, with only a high school degree.
Do you know, isn't the majority of the U.S. only high school, or only graduated high school? I don't think more people go to college. I think less people go to college than the 50%.
I don't know. I think I intuitively, it feels like most workers are college educated. I'm pretty sure there are a lot of jobs that require like a college degree. That number used to be over 50%.
Well, I'm saying about the working population. Do you think more of the working population is college graduate or high school graduate? The reason I'm bringing this because you just say that we don't have enough low-skilled workers to bring when these jobs come back to the U.S. We don't have enough to even maintain these jobs, so there's no point even having them back here.
Well, that's not right? My argument was that it's not worth bringing them back here because our workers could otherwise be doing much more productive things. Intuitively, I would guess that most of the U.S. workforce is college educated, but I don't know that for sure.
Let me look it up right now.
This says percentage of workforce of college education hit an all-time high of 67% in 2020.
Yeah, I just saw that, and then I saw, and then job openings is less than 45% they actually need a college degree. So 67% of the workforce is college educated, and only 55% of the workforce needs a college education. Or no. 55% of workforce doesn't need a college education to be in the jobs that they have.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're just,
your whole thing is you don't think there's a need to bring them back, and I understand where you're coming from, but also, wouldn't more jobs in the U.S. bolster the economy and increase it more? It would stimulate it more. We're having more production in the U.S., we're having more people working, even if it's low-skilled. How many people are, 7, million middle-aged men out of jobs now.
Nope. That number that you're
7 million?
Nope. That 7 million prime-age men figure that you're quoting from JD Vance includes people who are primarily disabled and sick. Only 600,000 of those people are actually prime-age men who aren't working because they couldn't find a job. The second thing I'm going to mention, I don't think tariffs protect jobs on net. You could use tariffs to protect certain jobs over other jobs, but I don't think they protect jobs on net. And then I think the jobs that they do protect are wasteful, essentially.
I also didn't hear this from JD Vance. It was actually a guy that I talked to at Jubilee.
Oh, okay.
We were talking about it. Economists estimate roughly 7 million men between the ages of 24 and 50 are believed to be sitting on the sidelines, not looking for work. Those people are not accounted for in the unemployment rate, which ticked down 3.4%. Now, where do you say that they're not? You said that they're disabled. Where are you looking at
primarily disabled. I can pull up the notes in it, but yeah, only like 600,000 of those men are actually people who want to work. Most of the other people are sick or disabled.
I mean, even CBS reported the same thing.
Well, I agree that there are 7 million prime-age men not working. It makes sense they're reporting that. It's just that J.D. Vance uses that figure, or whoever you talk to is using that figure to like claim that like there are a lot of people like choosing not to work or whatever. When in reality, it's just oh, here we go. I found it. It's just people who are like sick or whatever. Here we go. I found it finally. I'm gonna send it in the side chat.
I should probably open up Discord on my computer because I don't fuck it up on the phone.
Yeah, it's from the current population survey, and they ask the reason like why they're not working. There's an article there, like short article, and there's a video. But yeah, the largest reason for not working is illness or disability. That's 42% of the total for all men. There's only 600,000 of those men who aren't working because they can't find a job.
You said 42% of the 7 million?
Yeah. For all the, yeah.
How does that equal 600,000 if it's 42% of 7 million?
42% can't work because they're sick or disabled. And then 600,000 of the total 7 million are people who aren't, only 600,000 are people who aren't working because they can't find work.
And then what's the other, like, 3 million that's left out?
Going to school, taking care of family, or they're retired, or other, whatever other is.
Okay. The number is probably closer, if we're being honest, like to 2 million. But
if we're being honest, what does that mean?
Well, I mean, you're saying that these people are going to school. I mean, you're just kind of just speculating on it, right?
No, the same survey that asked them, the current population survey, it asked a bunch of people, are you working? Are you not working? And then it asked why. The same source you're getting the 7 million figure from breaks it down and says these people are ill or disabled or can't find work or are going to school or are retired or, yeah. It's from the same source the 7 million figures from.
Oh, okay.
But I guess so here's like a let's start with this is the easy one. Do you think tariffing like an intermediate good or an input like steel or wood, do you think that would protect jobs on net, like an overall net jobs added?
Yeah, I could. I mean, that's what Biden did, but we also saw.
Well, Biden did keep some of Trump's tariffs on steel. And I think he expanded some of them, but that's not my question. My question is,
yeah,
would it lead to an overall increase in the number of jobs in the economy?
I think a little bit, yeah, slightly.
So there's a with intermediate goods that businesses use as imports, there's a very easy way to understand why it shouldn't be true, and subsequent studies show it is in fact not true. These have downstream effects that hurt other businesses that consume these inputs. So if you tariff steel, it is true you might protect steel jobs because the steel jobs are protected from foreign competition. However, jobs that consume steel outnumber jobs that produce steel 80-1. So you're helping one steel business but hurting 80 other businesses that use steel. These are businesses that employ people, which is why we have studies on this. They all basically show the steel tariffs did not lead to any net increase in jobs. They protected a few steel jobs, maybe 2,000 steel jobs, but led to downstream job losses of like, a couple tens of thousands. It depends on the study.
Okay. Now, what do you think about Biden doubling tariffs for lumber from Canada?
I don't think that's good.
And what about him increasing tariffs on 18 billion worth of goods from China, and increasing tariffs to China to 25 to 100%?
It's probably not good. It would depend on the specific good. If some specific goods, I would support a tariff on China on, like batteries, I think would be fair. But most likely, I don't like it.
Now, when Trump imposed his tariffs in, what was it, 2017?
2018 and 2019, yeah.
2018, 2019. How come since it was China, we get, 17.5% worth of our goods from China? How come we didn't see an increase in prices on all 17.5% of the goods coming in?
Because we didn't tariff all of China, right? We tariffed specific things like steel and aluminum. For the things that we did tariff, like washing machines, steel, and aluminum, we did see increases in prices.
How much were it was a tariff on, I think it was, what was the percent? So we get 17.5% of goods from China every year, and he tariffed, I think, 50% of the total goods coming from China?
I don't know
what's the number
what percentage of goods he tariffed from China.
I mean, it didn't cost. Now, when you say cost goes up, so I mean, they've done studies, which I've already know you've looked at the study that I've cited about Jenny Tang and Brent Newman, where cost goes up 0.9% on certain retail goods. And there's also studies showing that when you raise corporate tax, prices go up 1.7%. So do you think you have the same benefit of, do you think it's the same thing when you're raising corporate taxes when you're tariffing these imports as well?
I mean,
prices are going to raise regardless.
I do think corporate taxes are going to increase prices to some degree. I also think tariffs increase prices to some degree, specifically for the goods tariffed. They don't necessarily increase prices for the non-tariffed goods. The whole point of tariffs is to increase prices to incentivize domestic production. Like,
no, I get you, but I'm saying your regard is you think it's just going to raise prices, which is basically your main negative connotation with tariffs.
I think that's one negative.
Prices for Americans, but is that the main one? Just so I know.
Well,
it's your main concern that people are going to be paying more for random goods that they buy. Because if that's your main concern, then it's such a small concern, because whether you voted whatever party, the prices are going to go up, whether you put tariffs on all goods or whether you raise corporate tax. It's going to be the same thing.
The main issue is that the added cost to consumers isn't accompanied by any significant benefit. That's the main issue. At least with corporate taxes, I don't think corporate taxes are optimal policy. I don't really like the corporate tax, but corporate taxes do increase prices to some degree, but they also raise a decent amount of revenue. I'm not convinced tariffs can do that. I don't think they have major downstream negative effects the same way tariffs do. I don't think they harm jobs to the same extent that tariffs on intermediate goods would. I don't think doesn't harm our foreign relations at all the same way tariffs do. It doesn't harm exports the same way tariffs do as well. That'd be the yeah.
Well, I mean, tariffs do increase revenue, so you could argue how much is gonna. I mean, that just depends on how much the tariff is, right? And if you don't say it affects jobs, raising corporate tax definitely affects jobs, because even taxfoundation.org cited when Harris wants to put in her plan, it's going to lose about 800,000 jobs in the long run, and it's going to lower wages. So it's the same thing.
I don't think corporate income tax has a big effect on jobs as tariffs. At least.
No, I'm saying they both have effect. I'm not saying they're equal, but I'm saying if the thing is, people's main concern is prices are going to go up regardless of tariffs. Prices are going to go up regardless of corporate tax. That's just a given. Now, they're both going to bring in revenue. You could argue which one's going to bring in more revenue depending on how much the tariffs are. They're both going to one might increase jobs more in the U.S. with U.S. manufacturing. Raising corporate tax is either going to lower jobs or just keep it the same. So, I mean, what is your point about it?
I told you I'll go into the jobs thing, but the point is, I'm convinced, or I would lean towards the corporate income tax not having super net negative effects, but I do think tariffs do have a lot of net negative effects. Here, just on the jobs point, I think there's a very easy way to explain this. It's called the Iowa car crop model. Okay. If you boil down free trade to its simplest thing, all it is producing more importables by first producing things you export and then trading. So with this in mind, there are two ways to make a car in America. The first is to manufacture them in Detroit, as we all know. The second one is to grow them in Iowa. To grow them in Iowa, first you plant seeds that are raw materials from which cars are made. Then you wait until the wheat grows. You harvest the wheat, you load it on ships, you sail them to Japan, or you sail them into the Pacific Ocean, and a few months later, they come back with cars on them. Trade is nothing but a form of technology. Like I said, it's just a form of technology that allows us to produce importables by first producing exportables and then exchanging them. The fact that there's a place called Japan, which is willing to trade wheat for cars, it's not really relevant to America's interest. Any policy designed to favor the first American technology for producing cars, Detroit car makers, is a policy that will harm auto producers in Iowa because they're the competition to the auto producers in Detroit. I think that's a pretty simple model for why they don't protect net jobs, even if it's not necessarily in intermediate goods.
Now, I understand where you're coming from now. Can you tell me on the tariffs that were already happening for the past, what was it, 6 years? Do you know the amount of decrease in jobs from those goods? Since that seems to be your main concern now is...
Well, I'm concerned about all these things. I don't know where I would weight each concern. I think tariffs increase prices to consumers, and that benefit is not outweighed by any that cost is not outweighed by any significant benefit. You'd have to, I don't know. I'm pretty sure Obama did tariffs on tires in 2000, Chinese tires in 2009. I think that led to a net decrease of jobs of like 2,500 something. I'm pretty sure Trump's steel tariffs led to a decrease in jobs of like 75,000, or net decrease of 74,000, because I think it protected 1,000 steel jobs and cost like it then cost like 74,000 jobs in other industries at the low end estimate. Yeah, I mean I can.
So is there a middle ground that we have on tariffs? Because I mean I'll agree with you. I don't agree with universal tariffs. But you only agree with tariffs on national security. I agree on tariffs on national security and tariffs that are from countries that are already tariffing us because it's not free trade if we're already paying for our imported goods. Is that something that you would agree on as well? So we agree on national security.
We agree on national security, yeah.
We both agree on not universal tariffs. Now, would you agree on if Europe and China are tariffing us that we tariff them the same amount on a percentile, whatever goods are going in and out?
No, I think it's in the U.S.'s interest to essentially engage in unilateral free trade, even if other countries are tariffing us. I think that really just amounts to them hurting their own citizens. I don't see a good reason why we should also hurt our own citizens by imposing tariffs on ourselves, because tariffs tax ourselves.
How's that free trade?
I mean, it might not be, depending on what you mean by free trade. It's fine if you don't want to call it free trade. But the U.S. is unilaterally engaging in free trade. It's allowing its own citizens the liberty to import, the freedom to import from other countries unrestricted.
But then we don't have free trade with them. So they only have free trade for us, but we don't have free trade with them.
Well, in this case, we would have free trade with them, right? They just wouldn't be reciprocating.
With them, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My fault. Said it opposite.
I mean, I guess...
So you're only for free trade one way.
Well, I'm for free trade both ways. However, I think I think it would benefit Europe and the U.S. if they didn't have tariffs either. I think it would benefit them and us. But if Europe does have tariffs, I don't think that justifies putting tariffs on our own country. I think that just hurts us more. I think it's in our national interest to not put tariffs up.
And can you explain again why you think it's in our national interest?
I think it's just
just for all the viewers to know, I know you know more than me on tariffs, so that's why I also want to be educated too. I'm not coming in here hard-headed, so I just want people to know that.
I think it's just a net cost. It basically you protect a few producers at the cost of a lot of consumers who will have to pay higher prices. I don't think it has a net benefit to jobs. I think you protect a few wasteful jobs because you're protecting jobs that are producing things that could have been imported cheaper, whilst those resources being used to produce those goods could have otherwise been used to produce things that are actually productive and can't be imported for cheaper. Yeah, it just doesn't seem... I just see no reason why that benefits us. Unless the only argument you could make is we could use these tariffs as a threat to make other countries lower tariffs. Now, I don't know if that would work, but if that did work, I would say the end result there is good. but it's just not in our interest to punish ourselves because other countries are punishing themselves.
Now, would you pay more for the same good if it was American made?
No, probably not.
No.
Why would
Wouldn't
I?
your purchase of purchasing something that's American made stimulate the economy more than purchasing something that's not American made?
Nope, not really. Purchasing something American just because it's American made, again, that's, you know, one, I would have, if I didn't do that, I would have extra money to spend on other things to buy either American goods or not American goods. You know, I'm buying the thing I prefer from a foreign country while keeping more money to spend on other things. And then secondly, that money that I spend on the imported good or whatever, that goes to somebody in China. That person in China has two options. One, they can buy an export from the US. Two, they can buy a financial asset from the US. Either they buy an export, someone in America benefits, or two, they buy a financial asset and someone gets investment for the company, or the US, you know, they buy a US bond. I think everyone benefits more from the second case than they do with the first case.
Okay. I understand that. So personally, you just wouldn't support American-made companies. You just go based off price. So whatever is the cheapest, that's what you're getting.
I mean, I think I'm arguably supporting American companies more by buying foreign products because I'm saving. It's not deadweight loss. Yeah.
Okay. No, I get you. Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot on tariffs. I mean, I know. So we could go over what we agreed with, and then what are we at a stalemate on? National security, not universal. Both agree with that. And then we just disagree on the jobs. You think it's going to decrease jobs, and I disagree. Think it's
what's the justification for it increasing jobs? How's it going to increase jobs?
Well, I mean, if you bring U.S. manufacturing here, you need to be employed by Americans.
Sure, but you
hurt
other industries, right?
Would increase the job pool for being here, so there's more job openings. And I don't think we're at. I do think we have abundance of low-skilled workers, regardless if you say the number was 67% are college educated, the whole other 33% are either non-college educated. Those are jobs that could be filled by either, and even, 55% of jobs 55% of jobs don't require a college degree. So you have a whole abundance of job opportunities for Americans that are either low-skilled, that don't need a college degree, and I think that would increase jobs. I
guess I don't see how it follows that you increase jobs, because you would agree that there's a cost to these tariffs, and that, like, one, again, domestic resources are being used to produce something that could have otherwise been imported cheaper. So producers, you know, there's an opportunity cost to goods that we could have otherwise produced. And then two, consumers have to reduce the quantity they demand because the price is higher.
What was the first part they said? Sorry, can you repeat it?
Domestic resources are being used to produce something that could have otherwise been imported for cheaper, whilst the domestic resources were used to produce other things. So there's a big opportunity cost, which is that part of that opportunity cost is jobs. And then what was the second one? The second one is
we need to lower our demand.
Oh yeah, the quantity demanded, the amount of consumers' demand decreases because the price is higher, and they have less money to spend. You reduce their real consumption possibilities.
Okay. No, I mean, you make a good argument. I understand your point of view. Let me ask you this: so, are you against just all Biden's tariffs? I'm guessing, or majority of them. Like, were you like kind of like mad, like when he implemented, like, wow, now I'm gonna have to pay more because of Biden?
Probably most of them. Yeah, I'd be against. Yeah.
Okay. Now, is this something like, say, Biden was still running and he said he's going to keep these tariffs? Was this something that would have concerned you, or is it kind of just?
I mean, it would have concerned
you because it's on the other side of the aisle.
It would have concerned me, but the alternative is Trump, who concerns me far more when it comes to tariffs. So.
Now, say Trump wasn't doing universal tariffs. Now he says it, but it's not feasible. He's not actually going to do it. Now, is it something that you're more open to, if it's more of targeted tariffs or specific rate quota tariffs?
I mean, I'm more open to targeted tariffs. I just think there's basically two things. One, I'm skeptical of the government's ability in general to know where tariffs are optimal. Not just Trump, but even Biden and his team. I don't know if the government doesn't have the information necessary to know like where a tariff is optimal. They don't know consumers' preferences. They don't know producers' preferences. And it's basically, I just think they almost always have a net cost. It's just that sometimes the benefit to national security is bigger. So yeah.
Okay. All right.
I guess there's another reason I think they don't do a good job of protecting jobs, and that's because they also hurt U.S. exports, right? So there's a few different reasons, but I guess do we think that hurting U.S. exports, first of all, is probably bad when it comes to jobs because people in manufacturing export goods to other countries?
Sorry, you cut out on my end for like the last 5 seconds.
Yeah. A lot of like manufacturing jobs export to other countries. So do we see how it's like intuitive that like hurting U.S. exports could damage U.S. jobs as well?
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. So I think there's like 4 different reasons that tariffs harm exports as well. Firstly is kind of the point I mentioned earlier. It's resource allocation. It's the fact that domestic resources are being used. Domestic resources are now being used to produce whatever domestically and sell domestically when they otherwise could have been devoted to producing exports. So I think there's kind of an easy way to understand this. We can imagine a country that, produces, it imports clothing and exports aircrafts. Placing a tariff on clothing, that would cause domestic prices to increase here, which would incentivize investment in clothing manufacturing. So domestic investment would move away from aircraft manufacturing and towards domestic clothing. Essentially, the same thing happens if you place a tax on exporting aircraft. If you place a tax on exporting aircraft, well, now you're going to shift investment towards clothing because you're reducing the profitability of investing in aircraft. So I think that's an easy way to see a reason why like those two things can be identical. If you tax imports, you also tax exports. Do we think that's reasonable?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Yeah. And then there's another, so there's also the technical term is foreign exchange rates. Currencies in foreign markets have their own supply and demand. If there's more demand for a currency, it gets more expensive. If there's less supply for a currency, it gets more expensive. If there's more supply for a currency, it gets cheaper relative to other currencies. So, when we use tariffs, the cost of imported goods rises and demand for imports falls. We're going to buy less imports because we're tariffing them. What that means is there's less demand for foreign currency, which makes the U.S. dollar more expensive relative to other currencies. And basically, a more expensive dollar counteracts the negative effect of on imports of tariffs, because with a stronger dollar, we can buy more of other currencies and therefore afford to buy more imports. The second thing it does is make it more expensive for other currencies to buy our currency, which harms U.S. exports. Does that seem reasonable? Okay.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Yeah, and we have there are studies that back this up too. It's hard to know exactly how much Trump's tariff specifically appreciated exchange rates, but we do see evidence that they did increase exchange rates for the U.S. dollar. Or they did make the U.S. dollar stronger relative to China. And there's like a meta-analysis by the IMF, 151 countries, from 1963 to 2014. It found that tariffs led to exchange rate appreciation. So it seems like we have a logical model there, and we have studies to back it up. The next thing
is there. Oh, sorry.
We'll continue.
I was going to say, because you're talking about the U.S. dollar getting stronger, is that to you like a net negative?
It's not necessarily a negative, but when it comes, it just hurts exports. Is my point. It basically means that tariffs don't have a super big effect on the trade deficit because you counteract their effect by increasing exchange rates, and this is more true the broader the tariff is. And then it's antithetical to bringing manufacturing back because it harms exports. Is the point there?
Okay.
Yeah. And then the last thing I'll mention is retaliatory tariffs. So, like, I mean, we were talking about this earlier a little bit. You're saying we should probably tariff countries that tariff us. Well, a lot of other countries, if we tariff them, are going to tariff us back. And that harms our exports as well, because it's more expensive for them to buy our exports. This actually happened in Trump's first term. He tariffed China. In response, China tariffed a bunch of U.S. agriculture. I don't know if you've heard about this before, but like...
I've briefly heard about this.
Yeah, a lot of farmers lost business because they couldn't sell to China anymore, and China was buying from Brazil and Argentina. We actually had to spend, I think, $30 billion subsidizing these farmers, giving farmers this money, because otherwise they would have gone bankrupt. And that's not good. Which is literally 92% of the revenue that this tariff raised went towards making sure farmers didn't go bankrupt.
Yeah.
And then
no, I mean, I agree with you bringing up good points.
Yeah. And then just the quick last thing to that is that there are like negative long-term effects too. So even if, you know, China reduces their tariffs, as they eventually did, they eventually basically granted a waiver. They subsidized buying U.S. agriculture, so now in effect there's no tariff. They still technically have them, but it's just subsidized to offset it. Even though we did that, individuals in China are going to think, well, hey, I might as well buy from Argentina because I don't know if the U.S. is just going to increase tariffs again and we're going to have to retaliate. It's more reliable if I buy from Argentina. And two, other countries build out their fixed cost. They invest in more stuff, which can put them at a relative advantage compared to us.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I also because you increase production costs. So like easiest example here, we have a nail company in the United States, a nail company in Canada. If we put tariffs on steel, well, the nail company in the U.S. has to pay 10% more for the steel used to make their nails. The nail company in Canada doesn't have to do that. So now that U.S. firm is put at a disadvantage in export markets and domestic markets, meaning we're going to buy more Canadian nails and other countries are going to buy more Canadian nails as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Because I know earlier you said you brought up like there's like studies behind this. Now the study that I brought up that I think you've looked up, what do you think about that? Where it shows that prices on certain retail goods only went up 0.9% when tariffs were between 10 to 20%.
I mean, I didn't look at that part of it. The part I heard you cite was the 4.4 figure. I mean, it's possible that retail prices didn't go up that much, but is that retail prices in aggregate, or is that retail prices of only the tariffed goods?
Retail prices of only the tariff goods. Went up 0.9%. So a lot of things people think, I've seen these videos on TikTok all the time. They're like, oh, if you tariff 10%, your goods are going to increase by 10%, like the cost of it. And I think that's just kind of crazy that people will just basically make that assumption.
I mean, it depends on a lot of things. Like, it depends on how much the other country might be willing to subsidize their exports to reduce the pre-tariff price. It depends on how much the company is going to reduce its profit margin. So it depends on how available substitutes are for that goods. But I don't know, where does it say that in here? Like, if I look up 0.9.
Should be in the bottom. Or is it in the bottom? Here, I could try to bring it up. I need to pay for that one.
I mean, I have the PDF. When I type in 0.9, nothing, there's a 10.9, 10.09, and there's a table. I don't really know what this table is showing. Table for the year 2011 has a negative 0.09 in it, but that can't be what it's talking about. It says consumers have a discount rate of 0.99, equivalent to an annual real rate of 1%, but I don't know what it's referring to by discount rate here. I'd have to read more of it. there's 90% confidence intervals here, but
let's see, this one showing 4 goods didn't have sharp price increases. Refrigerators exhibited a mild increase. What was it? I made a breakdown of my debate against Destiny, and I put it in there. I screenshotted and highlighted in it. But now I can't find it when I'm looking at the actual PDF. Let me see. What do you think about the Jubilee video just as a whole?
I thought it was interesting. I don't even remember some of the stuff that happened on it. I don't know. I think Destiny is honestly not that good at arguing as some economic stuff. So.
Really?
I think rhetorically,
your top debater on your side.
Sure. No, I think rhetorically he's good, but I think he doesn't. I don't know if he has some of the knowledge that he should have on some of these things. But
something that you felt like he lacked on that you kind of know, or
I don't think he talked about people. I think mentioned the jobs things to him, and he didn't really respond to that. I think all he said was, you're going to increase prices. I think he people talked about manufacturing, and then I think his response was partially correct. He said oh, you want the U.S. manufacturing things when we could be making iPhones or whatever, which that is a good point. But I think it's another good point is that universal tariffs probably wouldn't even help manufacturing. All it would do is harm it. Universal tariffs at least would.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I guess
so this one shows
oh, sure.
It's on page 22. It's the 0.44% increase on goods when the 10% point tariff was when there was a 10% point tariff increase on the good. The price of the good went up 0.44%.
Wait, what? I'm on page 22. You said we might be looking at different PDFs.
Yeah. It's like the second paragraph.
Hold on, read it. Read a bit of text from it so I can control F it to see if it's...
Oh, it's the first column estimates the regression using monthly data from both retailers for the time period running from January 2017 to July 2019.
I think we're probably looking at different PDFs. I think can you link the thing that you're reading?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not as tech savvy as you, so... I mean, you could just, I'll just tell you exactly what I typed in on Google, and then you could go to that one. It's, I just typed in Jenny Tang's study on tariffs, and it's literally the second one. It's the National Bureau of Economic Research. I clicked on that, and I clicked on and it brings up the PDF automatically.
That doesn't, how do you spell her last name?
Tang.
Oh, there we go.
But that wasn't even the one I was trying to find. I was trying to find the 0.9. But cause I don't even think that was the one. I think that's the one I didn't cite correctly. Because I even stated in because I did a breakdown of my debate and I said some numbers wrong. So then I was trying to be transparent that I stated this wrong in the video.
Sure, because the number I heard you cite before you got cut off was 4.4.
No, I said 0.44.
Oh,
I actually watched the video too. Yeah, which was this one, but I don't think I was citing the correct part because when I'm reading it now, I mean, it kind of makes sense, but you could tell me if that's a correct assumption, if I'm understanding it correctly. Let me get to it. I'm trying to find the 0.9. Do you watch any of the other Jubilee videos?
Yeah, I react to them for YouTube content sometimes, so yeah. It's free views.
How do you think, like, Charlie Kirk or Ben Shapiro did?
I mean, I think Charlie Kirk did well, I think. But part of that's because he I don't think I guess he had like the two TikTok debaters there. I think when he went up against the TikTok debaters, like I mean, you could see, you know, he doesn't do as well against them as he did against like the other like college students or whatever. The other woke kids. I don't remember some of the Ben Shapiro one. I think Ben Shapiro did decent, especially you know, even when he went up against the one streamer IRI. I think he did decent there too.
Who's the one streamer I've never heard? IRI.
IRI, I'm really important. Yeah, he had like a 10-minute like border debate with Ben Shapiro on that Ben Shapiro episode.
Border one.
I mean, even here, like it seems like. Hold on. Quote you said page 22 on page 22. Since now panel B at table 3 offers some basic summary. Where's the? What am I looking for?
I was saying the 0.44. It's actual page 22, like that's labeled on the document. My PDF
okay.
On like your PDF.
Yeah. Okay.
So that might be. Yeah.
0.4% increase in that goods price relative to the goods in the same sector. This estimate increases slightly, but it's very similar if we analyze the prices of each of the two retailers. Are the goods in the other sectors also tariffed, or are the goods in the retailer not affected? They're not affected. Okay. Price for the products affected by the Chinese imports grow relative to the price of products. So it could be, I mean, yeah, it seems like this study finds relatively small increases in prices, even they say it's not stark for retail things. I guess it's,
Yeah. And then here's another one. I found the 0.9. It's on page 3, like actual page 3, and it says, estimates suggest that a 20% tariff is associated with a 0.9% increase in retail prices of affected household goods such as dishes, furniture, linens, toaster ovens, towels, and umbrellas, and a 1.4% increase in retail prices of affected electronic products after 1 year of tariffs. So I guess my whole point that I'm bringing this up is people, I think, just drastically try to make them seem like it's going to be a lot worse than it actually is. And that's kind of like my main point of why I even brought it up in the debate.
I mean, I
do think there's pros and cons to both things, but I think what they like to do is, because especially, here's the thing, if you're on one side of the political party and the other side does something, you're going to do your best to highlight the cons as much as possible to kind of push that it's bad, because that's what you want to make that kind of look. So I mean, I don't know if I phrased it well, but that's kind of like the reason why I brought it up.
I mean, I agree. Like, it doesn't always necessarily translate that like a 10% tariff is gonna increase prices 10%. I also don't know. Do you know if this study is when it says affected Chinese goods, does it mean like goods directly tariffed or goods using imports or inputs that were tariffed? Because I don't. My understanding is that a lot of retail products were not directly tariffed. They just probably used inputs that were tariffed. Would be my guess, but I don't know for sure.
Can you tell me the difference between like what you just said? Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. Are these goods that were directly tariffed, or are these goods that were relying on, production materials that were tariffed?
Oh, so you're saying were the materials tariffed or the actual good one itself tariffed?
Yeah, because my understanding is that a lot of the tariffs on China during Trump's term were like on steel and aluminum and a few other raw materials. I don't think we tariffed some home appliances. To my understanding, we did not tariff many retail products. So it would make sense to me if the increase in prices was relatively low because you're not tariffing the product itself. You're just tariffing the inputs for it. Especially because prices tend to be sticky. They take time to increase because people are used to the price that they're paying.
This one shows after 1 year, so as well.
Well, even
also, can you still hear me? Because my right AirPod just died, so I don't know.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Working fine. Okay, cool. Yeah, my right one just died. But I mean, I don't really have any more on tariffs. If there's anything else that you want to tell me, or if we want to try to come with like a closing statement on tariffs, or whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, like, I can...
But I'm open to hearing more. If you want to tell me more, I'm open to whatever.
I'm just checking this out. I would imagine, but like, I'd have to read more of this study. But to my understanding, we didn't tariff a lot of goods from China. We tariffed a lot of like steel and aluminum and like a few other things. So it makes sense if retail prices didn't go up that much because they were just relying on inputs that were tariffed, and that represents an overall small. The stuff from China represents an overall small cost of good in total. And then also production could, with tariffs on only China, production can shift to other countries where tariffing everyone, which I know you don't agree with, but tariffing everyone means that no matter where production is, they always have to, we always have to pay that price. Yeah, I mean, I guess.
The study also talked about tariffs on refrigerators as well, like the increase in that. So, I mean, yeah, you could go through the study in your spare time, because I think you're correct on some of them was about tariffing just like the actual like materials, and other is tariffing that like the whole product itself. So I think it's both outlined in the study. So maybe something that if you want to look at later.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
It's just, to my knowledge, we didn't tariff a lot of goods. Again, we just tariffed the materials for them. It says he tariffed solar panels, washing machines, steel, aluminum. But I don't think we tariffed like silverware or anything.
Keep up the good
Thank you, Major Tao. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Hell yeah, brother.
I think you might be right, because it says affected household goods, so I'm assuming the affected household goods,
yeah,
basically meaning the materials to make the household goods is what was tariffed.
Yeah, but I guess
yeah,
like, even if there's a relatively small increase in prices, I would still, I guess like, my final thing on tariffs would be, even if they lead to a relatively small increase in consumer prices, there's just not a big benefit to accompany that, so I'm not going to support them regardless. I don't think they protect jobs. I don't think there's an intrinsic need to bring manufacturing back. I think the only case that are justified is pretty grave national security concerns.
And you also said the threat of the tariff as well.
I don't think that necessarily justifies it, just because I'm skeptical of their ability. I'm skeptical of their ability to actually do that effectively. But usually sometimes people will say like, "Oh, Trump's just going to use them as a threat." And to the extent that tariffs could, in theory, be used to make other countries engage in free trade as well, I would agree that that's a benefit. I'm just skeptical of their ability to do that, so I don't think it justifies them doing that.
Okay. I mean, you've probably seen in interviews, I don't know if you believe him, but he's talked about how he has used threat of tariffs to stop wars. I mean, obviously, we have no idea how true that is. Is that something that you would see that could have happened, or do you think it's kind of just smoke and mirrors type thing?
I kind of doubt that would happen. But, yeah, I mean, just like final thing, like, at the end of the day, like, we have the models that show this, and we have the research to back it up. The IMF study, they did 151 countries from 1963 to 2014. They found tariffs. They increase economic inequality. They decrease domestic output and productivity. They lead to increases in unemployment, and they also lead to exchange rate appreciation, which counteracts their intended purpose anyway. And therefore they only have small effects on trade deficits. So the models and the studies seem to all suggest that this is just not a good thing.
Oh, let me ask you a question I forgot to ask. Now, he did say in the beginning that he wanted to use universal tariffs to get rid of income tax. Now, is that something that you think feasible, something that would be good, or you think it's kind of a long shot? If it was something that he would do, would that be something that you'd be like, okay, maybe I do like tariffs?
It's not feasible. There's a concept in economics called the Laffer curve. Basically, you can only tax something to a certain extent. Like, obviously, if you taxed everything at 110%, well, there'd just be no economic activity. You're not going to raise a ton of revenue. There'd just be no one would do anything. So you can only increase rates on tariffs to a certain extent, or rates on imports to a certain extent before people just stop importing, right? If you tariffed everything at 1,000%, there'd just be no imports. So the revenue maximizing point at which the revenue maximizing point at which you can tax imports is probably about 40 to 50%, which would only raise like $500 billion in revenue, not the $2 trillion that income tax raises. And the second thing is that like income tax is progressive. If you make less income, you don't pay much income tax. Some people don't pay any income tax. Like I think the bottom 50% of American households pay like $600 a year on average for income tax. Tariffs are regressive. They, increase the price of imports at a flat rate. That flat rate is a higher percentage of a poor person's income than it is a rich person's income. And then poor people also consume more imported goods as a percentage of their spending than rich people do because they, need the cheap imports from China and they just spend less on goods that aren't imported, that are more luxury goods or whatever. So I don't think that's a feasible idea. I don't think it's a great idea because I think the deadweight loss from tariffs is more than the deadweight loss from income tax, even if I don't think income tax is the best tax.
Got it. Yeah, I just want to know your thoughts on it because when I heard him say it, everyone like popped out like, "Oh, this is such a great idea," and I was like, "Wait," because I already knew that we get about $2 trillion in revenue from tax. We get about $4 trillion in revenue altogether. So I was just like, I don't think we're going to make it up with 10% universal tariffs. But I mean, we also do know like the average American, if you do just across the board, average American pays about $13,000 in taxes per year. But that's when you do it across like all brackets. And then I was just like, but then they say our prices would increase on average of 4,000. So I was just like, doesn't even seem like those numbers have to be at least even closer to be like a net positive for our government spending to even have the revenue to spend. So
yeah.
How did someone join?
Yeah, he is here. Sample, you can make that one point, okay? But this is supposed to be a 1v1, but you can make that one point.
Right. I just want to make one point and then leave. So one thing is like, let's say a company moved to China, okay, and now we tariff China, okay, in the hopes that the jobs will be brought back. So put aside the fact that the research very much clearly shows that tariffs destroy jobs domestically. Why would they move to the United States instead of like to another country? Right, like they can move to Mexico, they can move to wherever else. Like there's no reason for them to move specifically to the United States. I think a better way, instead of doing tariffs, would be giving them tax credits for going to the United States. That's directly an incentive to go to the United States instead of a punishment for going to a specific country. Right, so like even if your goal is to increase domestic production, tariffs are not the way. That's my take. But then, I don't want this to be a 2v1.
No, you're good. Thank you for the information.
Yeah, okay. Just wanted to say that. But yeah. Bye.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like tax credits can be preferential because they actually bring production back here, rather than just to other countries, which is why.
I mean, that's also similar to what he was suggesting with like the corporate tax. If you bring U.S. manufacturing here, then he'll lower the corporate tax for those U.S.-based manufacturers to 15%. I mean, essentially, close to the same idea, right?
Kind of. I mean, Trump's proposal is more broad. Usually, when we do tax credits, it's like a pretty specific thing. That's like a tax credit. But I mean, yeah, like even Biden did that with the Chips and Science Act, right? Gives preferential tax treatment to companies that manufacture semiconductors, and I think that's fair, preferable to just tariffing semiconductors.
Yeah. I mean, he did say that it would be more beneficial if it's like tax credits, but lowering the corporate tax to 15% would kind of be just as beneficial. Obviously, it's not the same thing, but it kind of does encourage U.S. manufacturing to come back if their corporate tax can be 15% here compared to, what's that now? Is that 21?
Yeah, it's at 21.
21, and then, yeah, so a 6% decrease.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to know. I don't know what the elasticity of that is, so I don't know how much companies respond to. I agree that would be an incentive for companies to manufacture in the U.S. I don't know. I just don't know what
I was just saying because the government said an incentive to bring U.S. manufacturing back would be tax credits, and I'm just saying that was a proposal that we already did to bring U.S. manufacturing back. On top of that, you get a 15% corporate tax. So I was just kind of answering his question, or kind of responding to his statement.
I guess you want to say whatever you want left on tariffs, and then we can talk about like what other economic stuff from Trump you like or that you don't like from
Um,
Biden. Or
so yeah, so for tariffs, basically my whole point is, I just want to say first, thank you for having me on to educate me on it. Because trust me, I don't know too much about it, but I try to educate myself at least somewhat on it. But my whole thing is, I just don't like the point that everyone thinks is just going to increase prices dramatically. And I do think bringing U.S. manufacturing back will lead to some jobs. I know you guys disagree. And yeah, I mean, I'm against universal tariffs. I totally agree with you that. Agree with you on the national security for tariffs. And then the last part, I'll just disagree with you. If countries are tariffing us, we should be tariffing them, because the actual definition of free trade is freedom of trade without tariffs or trade barriers. So technically, we don't have free trade with those countries. But yeah, that's my closing statement on tariffs.
sure. So I guess are there any other like things from Trump economic policy wise that you really like or?
I don't know. I mean, I'll be honest, the hardest part there's a reason why I was able to go on the debate against SNE about economy, because it's the one that not many people wanted to do. Like when I don't know if the way the video works is you're supposed to raise your hand before the timer goes off, and then they kind of pick so people aren't rushing to the chair as much. Sometimes they would just say, okay, just rush, and then sometimes they'd have like raise your hand. And for like the border, everyone wanted to raise their hand, and all the other ones, everyone raised their hand. And then economy was like almost no one, so that's when I was like, fuck it, I'll go up and talk about it, see how I could do. Yeah, I mean, for like economy wise, I do think the Tax Cut and Jobs Act was beneficial to the middle class, and I know the whole argument is, oh well, it benefited the wealthy too. I was like, yeah, just because it benefits the wealthy doesn't mean it doesn't benefit the middle class as well. So I do think that was somewhat effective. I do think it had a lot of good things in the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. Am I like a big fan? I thought it was perfect. No, I don't think it was perfect. But there's also plans that I like about like Harris. I like that she wanted to do a 25% minimum tax on, was it billionaires, or what was the number that they had to be earning?
I think
to have a 25% flat tax rate. I thought that was a good idea.
I think it was that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for like the economy, I do think the Tax Cut and Jobs Act was good. It lowered the percent of taxes for like 5 out of the 7 bracket. It took away the mandate for Obamacare, the Affordable Health Care Act, so they weren't penalized for not having health care. Increased the standard deduction, increased child tax credits, so I think those are all beneficial.
Yeah, I don't obviously agree like with the notion that like, you know, obviously the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act can benefit disproportionately rich people, but still benefit the middle class. I guess there are a few. So the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, I don't necessarily think was bad or anything. I don't think it led to any significant increase in growth. Like tax cuts just haven't been shown to do that for the most part. I think one of the big reasons it helped lower class people was because of the child tax credit. It doubled the child tax credit. There are actually a lot of things in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that would have increased most middle class people's income if they didn't have the child tax credit. But I do think the child tax credit is really good, which is why I wanted Kamala Harris to extend it. We'll see if Trump ends up extending it. We'll see.
Well, he did say, wasn't he increasing it to 5,000? But that was just for newborns, right? And then Harris said she wanted to increase it to 6,000.
I don't know if Trump ever gave a number. My understanding is that Trump
he said 5.
Has vaguely said that he supports it, but Kamala Harris, it seemed like, had a better plan. I don't know. I also know J.D. Vance voted against the tax credit every single time it came up in the Senate. So I don't know how much
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how much I trust him to do that. But I do think the child tax credit.
5,000. So, but
I mean, I just haven't. Trump 5,000 tax credit. It's possible. I just haven't heard it.
And I do think the tax cut did kind of increase our long run GDP and GNP. I think it was like 2%. Obviously, it did decrease our revenue, but that's obviously because taxes were cut.
2%, is that for what? From the tax foundation?
For our long run GDP and our GNP.
Yeah, it's that long run, like what, over 10 years or whatever?
I think it's 8 or 10 years.
Yeah. I mean,
I forget the number.
I think
So,
Trump
it does
way.
have some benefit.
I don't disagree that, like, I'm not a huge fan of the corporate tax. There are plenty of other taxes I would prefer. But I guess historically it doesn't seem like we have like there's a big meta-analysis that I cite a few times that show like the corporate tax cuts have basically a zero effect on growth. They don't seem to increase growth that much. The tax foundation uses its like I would trust like that evidence over the tax foundation's like projected model, just because this is like observed evidence versus the tax foundation's, you know, more subjective model that's projecting things. But like I would agree, cutting the corporate tax rate probably had a relatively small impact, but positive impact on long run growth, just because you're increasing production. Essentially, you're increasing corporate activity. But I guess Kamala Harris was in favor of extending the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act for everyone making under $400,000 a year, right? So it seems like that would be a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I do think she had some good tax plans in her, or good tax ideas in her proposed plan.
Yeah, and I think they're I guess this issue Kamala Harris is not better on. In fact, arguably she's slightly worse on. Our tax code is like way too complex in my opinion. and the way we do benefits is way too complex. We have like a bunch of different like random exemptions, and I'm pretty sure the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act really like only added to that complexity. I don't think it had any significant I don't think it reduced complexity to any degree, and I think that's an issue that we need to address as well, because I think it doubled the child tax credit. I think it also had it ended the I think it increased the standard deduction, and I think what's the SALT thing, the like state and local deduction? I think it like added a cap to state and local tax deduction or something.
That one I do not know, to be honest with you.
Taxpayers who itemize may deduct up to $10,000 of property sales or income tax already paid to state or local government. So I think that's added complexity as well. That's an issue that I don't think Kamala Harris is necessarily better on, but I don't think Trump has properly addressed. What do we think? I guess it seems like to me Trump has like a lot of plans to decrease revenue through exempting tips and exempting overtime pay and exempting a bunch of other like Social Security benefits and decreasing corporate taxes. Does not seem like he has a solid plan to decrease government spending. I guess like he has Doge, but that's run by fucking Vivek and Elon Musk. I don't really think I trust them to be able to come up with a good plan to cut government spending, especially not by the amount required to pay for these tax cuts. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I feel like, hold on, you made 4 points right before, and I wanted to reference one.
Sure, you can. Yeah, sure. Just do that, yeah.
Or can you repeat what the first 4 points were? Because there's one I wanted to reference on, but
first four, I don't know. I think I said the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act probably added. I think the first one I said was that it would have increased taxes in the middle class if it weren't for the child tax credit, and I think I said it added complexity to the tax code with these like state and local deduction thing. It might have actually done other things to reduce the complexity, but I think it also increased complexity there. I remember that, and then I don't know what I think I had 3, and then the last one is just seems like he wants to decrease spending or decrease revenue, but doesn't have a good plan to decrease spending.
Now, what do you think a good plan is, though? Because I mean, what would you do different? Because I mean, most of our spending is in Social Security and Medicaid. That's what most of our mandatory spending is. Our discretionary spending is, on average, what is it, like 1.7 trillion a year right now? So that could obviously be modified each year with Congress and the president to kind of decide on what's a good spending plan. so they could reduce things in that. But I mean, the majority of it, what is it? I think it's like 3 trillion. No, it's not 3 trillion. How much goes to Social Security and Medicaid each year?
I don't know the number, but it's like I think it's 2 to 3 trillion or something. I think it's one. Yeah, I think it's 2 trillion. I think it's 1.9 trillion or something. Yeah, it's
where like the majority of our money goes every time. But there was another thing they said a lot of the spending's on. It was Social Security, Medicaid, and.
But that also, I mean, that does like account for some of the deficit. But like the Social Security and Medicaid are paid for by payroll tax. Like if you decrease Social Security spending, like that money doesn't go to the general fund. It just goes to sustaining Social Security. You'd have to do major reforms to Social Security. Yeah. Which I don't think is like.
Do I think it's good what Elon Musk and Vivek are doing?
I'm asking.
Like, you just don't trust them in general.
Well, no, but I'm asking like, do you think that they have a good plan, as good a plan for cutting spending as they do for cutting revenue?
That's actually a good question. I don't know. I mean, we're going to have to see how it plays out. I think it's going to be a hard job, but it depends how much we're cutting revenue. Right now, our revenue, if it stays the same, it's what, 4 trillion a year? Right now, we're averaging, I think it's at 5.5 trillion of government spending.
Yeah, but Trump, has like all the things he wants to deduct, and the decrease in corporate income tax, all of which are expensive to finance. That decreases revenue quite a bit.
I mean, honestly, I can't tell you if they have a good plan or not. Do I think it's a hard job and it's going to be hard to do? Yeah. Do I have confidence they will do it? I mean, I'm going to give them the benefit down. I'm going to hope that they're able to kind of better our spending while our revenue is reduced. But I mean, something we're just going to have to see.
I guess. I think, yeah, it just doesn't. I think Elon Musk is promising to cut it by like 2 trillion annually, and that just does not seem feasible. And like, in the like, they have like the Twitter page for Doge, right? The Department of Government Efficiency. Like, one of the things that they put on there was like, I think the biggest thing they put on there was net, interest payments on debt. Like, we have to pay that. That's not optional. You can't just cut that. I mean, I guess we could default. That's actually probably unconstitutional to default, but defaulting is not the best choice. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you much about that. Sorry, it's kind of boring when it comes to that regard, because I don't know too much. I can't talk too much on it. I mean, we could talk about federal spending, but.
Well, I guess how do you feel about that? Like,
well, right now we do way too much spending. I mean, even during Biden's administration, we have way more deficit spending than during Trump's administration. Well, and I think that's just bad, and you can blame it on COVID, but what did he do?
I think for the $2 trillion. Yeah, but I think for the one, I think that probably led to some of the job recovery. Two, I think that probably, I mean, I think without COVID, Trump actually had higher deficits than Biden. But
yeah, I mean, so do you know how much Trump spent during his administration on COVID-related expenses?
I don't know exactly. No, I think it was about
it's 4 trillion.
4 trillion, sure.
4 trillion is COVID-related, and then do you know how much Biden spent?
I'm assuming. I think it was like about 2 trillion, right?
Yeah, 2.1. And do you know how much each one has of deficit spending during their 4 years?
Depends how you look at it. Like, are you saying debt approved over 10 years, or are you saying how much they
spend during their term of 4 years, not the debt approved for 10 years. When you do that, then you have to put in the federal interest rates that have gone up during the Biden administration. That's going to cause in 10 years another 5 trillion in deficit. Obviously, it's not directly. I mean, it's kind of his fault, but not 100% his fault. He has some play in it. I'm talking about the actual spending between each administration. So this goes to their mandatory and discretionary spending. I think Trump was the only one that did supplemental spending, which was, I think, $2 trillion, which was for the COVID, was like the height of COVID. He had $2 trillion of supplement spending.
I don't know the exact number that they each had during their term. I think I have somewhere in my notes stuff on this, but
yeah. Well, my point is, everyone kind of just blames it on COVID is why the spending was so high. And if we look at the deficit spending between Trump and Biden, Biden had, I think, 7.7, but he only had $2 trillion of COVID spending, and Trump had 5.5, and he had $4 trillion of COVID spending. So who's actually spending more during their term?
I think what matters more arguably is the 10-year debt approved, right? Because I don't know why you would look at just under their term and not like what they actually approved.
That means you have to put in the 10-year debt approved of Biden's.
Well, yeah, but you do if you do that.
Interest rates going up is another $5 trillion from his term.
I mean, I don't know.
Actually, a total of $12 trillion.
Federal interest rate. What do you mean federal interest rate going up?
What was that?
What do you mean federal interest rate going up? Do you mean like what the rate the Fed sets?
Yeah, well, so that was on interest rate on our debt that went in.
That's not Biden's decision, but like even I think if you.
No, I mean, Biden has a play in it because who elects the board of governors of the Federal Reserve? Do you know who elects them?
It depends what the president nominates him, sure, but that's not. One, the FOMC is separate from that, and the FOMC chooses a member to be the chair. They don't actually. That's a different thing than the president. The president can't control that part, but the president doesn't control the FOMC. He only controls the board of governors and who is the chair of the board of governors. But also, we don't want the. Here's a question: what do you think of Trump calling Jerome Powell in his first term and telling him to lower interest rates?
Well, I mean, lowering interest rates do have pros and cons, just like higher interest rates do.
Yeah. So who should be making it? I mean, it's more of an issue of who should be making that decision, right? Like politicians or like a actual economist that operates independently.
Well, they're a private and public sector. They're not just a private. The Federal Reserve's not just private.
Yeah, but I understand, but they operate independently. They're supposed to operate independently. Biden actually didn't call Jerome Powell. Surprisingly, crazy. Presidents don't usually call the Fed chairman.
Why do you think the president should not be involved if they're the one nominating the 7 board of governors?
Because I think raising interest rates is very politically unpopular, even when it's a necessary thing to do, and voters don't understand enough about the Phillips curve and inflation and unemployment and how money creation works. I think politicians have really bad incentives that are usually aligned with helicoptering money into the short term, which can lead to a lot of negative effects in the long run. That's why, like, we have data on this too. Countries with a greater level of central bank independence have lower inflation rates. This has been empirically proven, and we can pretty easily see like why a politician might want to helicopter money rather than raise interest rates.
So you thought him calling Jerome Powell was
horrible? Absolutely.
You disagree with?
Absolutely. That is like one of. I love Jerome Powell. Okay, so to me, that is absolutely horrible that he did that, and that he said. He wanted Jerome Powell to resign. Like, he publicly said, like, I wouldn't stop Jerome Powell from resigning. You know, I think he said he constantly harassed him publicly, you know, saying other countries have lower interest rates. Why can't we lower our interest rate? Yeah, I think that's absolutely horrible they did that. Yes. Shows he has no respect for the independence of the Fed, which is a very important thing.
So you're just against lower interest rates then?
No.
It's like your main thing.
I care about who makes the decision. Whether it's a politician or whether it's the FOMC. I want the FOMC to make the decision without political interference. Low interest rates can be good. Okay, listen, negative interest rates can be good, okay? If we're in a recession, then we do fucking negative interest rates, okay? Do quantitative easing. But I don't want the president in charge of that at all.
I mean, it's kind of hard to not have a say in it if you're the one electing the board of governors that control it. That's my point.
They nominate
or nominating, not elect, nominating. So I mean, how are you just going to nominate someone? Because it's the same thing. Like, you're going to nominate someone and you're not going to oversee them at all.
With the Fed, you shouldn't.
Because, I mean, the Federal Reserve is a private entity, so they serve to the public.
Mm-hmm. They're supposed to be politically independent, though.
If they're politically independent, then they wouldn't be nominated by the president.
Well, they're not 100% politically independent, but the operations, at least day to day, are supposed to be politically. Their decisions are not supposed to be influenced by politics. Presidents they do nominate the head of the Federal Reserve, and the Senate confirms them, but they don't even. Okay, Jerome Powell has like 3 positions. 1, he's on the board of governors, which he's nominated for by the president. 2, he's like the chair of the board of governors. But then 3, because in order to be the chair, you have to be a member of the board of governors. 3, he's the head of the FOMC, the Federal Open Market Committee. They're not even. I don't even think they're in the law that sets up the Federal Reserve. But he's the chair of that. That the president has no legal authority over at all, and nor should he. I guess I never want interest rates decisions to be made by the president.
Even if it's an interest rate that you'll agree with? Like, say you're like, wow, I'm glad that they lowered interest rates, and that was either persuaded by whoever the person is in office. You'd be like, nah, I hate this because the president influenced this.
I like the outcome. I don't like how I don't like how we got there. I think political independence of the Fed is very important, and not having that outweighs the cost or outweighs the benefit of any individual interest rate decision that I would like.
Okay. I mean, I understand what you're saying. I just don't think they're politically independent if they're nominated by the president.
Well, it's a spectrum, obviously.
Whatever political party that president is in or is in power will maybe sway the decision of.
Well, Jerome Powell was nominated by both Trump and Biden, right? Like, Biden chose to keep Powell.
Yeah, he was re-nominated during.
Yeah, exactly. Because Biden actually has respect for political independence of the Fed, and Trump does not.
So you just don't want any government interference in it, even if it's the right decision. Kind of your point.
As a system, it's not good to have it be linked to the government. No. Yeah, I want it to be independent, primarily independent. Obviously, it's a spectrum of like independent to fully politically coerced or whatever. But like, yeah.
Okay. I can understand that. I can understand where you're coming from for that. I just don't think it's as bad as people want to make it seem.
I think it's atrocious. Like I can pull up the study. Like we know countries with independent central banks have lower inflation than countries with less independent central banks. Like, this is a very important institution that I think is a good institution that Trump wants to fundamentally corrupt, and I think that's atrocious.
No, I mean, I understand if that's something that your preference is. I mean, I could see your point that them not having any political interference would more than likely be more beneficial. But if the outcome is something that was politically interfered and it's a good outcome, I'm also not gonna be
again. I may
about it, if that makes sense.
Like the outcome, but I'd be worried because like once Federal Reserve independence is gone, it's like hard to get back. Like, a lot of politicians aren't like willingly gonna like hand that power over. So you're like fundamentally like corrupting like a very important like central piece of the U.S. economy, a central piece of U.S. institutions that's meant to be independent. You are like gravely corrupting that when you try to influence its decisions. I think that's horrible because I don't think Trump has
corrupting it. If you're trying to influence it for, let's say, it's for the good of your citizens that you're serving, and you influence them for the good of the citizens you're serving, do you think that's corrupt? If it's for the good of...
Yeah, you're fundamentally corrupting that institution. If it's meant to be a politically independent institution, and you're a politician trying to influence its decisions. Yeah.
Now, would the institution already be corrupt if they're not looking out for the good of the people in the first place?
I mean, and
the president would have to step in and influence that to them to do what is right. Wouldn't it necessarily already be corrupt?
That could be corrupt, but it'd be corrupt in a different way. I also don't think the Fed is corrupt. I think the Fed's very good, but
okay.
Yeah, I guess that's why I really don't like that, because I love my man Jay Powell.
Yeah, I didn't know he's the chair of, what was the other one that you said?
He's
The last one?
the
I
FOMC.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Learned something new.
Yeah, the Federal Market Committee. They're the ones that they control a lot of the monetary policy.
Now, if you want to talk about inflation, since we're still on the economy, what are your reasons why the numbers are so drastic between Trump's first term and Biden's term?
COVID, Fed policy, part of it was deficit spending under Biden, part of it was deficit spending under Trump, a lot of it was supply side shocks as well. Yeah.
So do you attribute to anything of either spending by Biden that contributed to higher inflation, or...
Yeah, I think some of it...
And you just said the Fed...
yeah, the Fed did quantitative easing, the Fed lowered interest rates, but yeah, I would agree. A little bit of it was Biden. I don't know how much I would say it's Biden, but yeah.
But you do put blame that Biden plays part in our inflation increasing.
Yeah,
too.
but I also grant Biden credit for, the jobs he created, or I mean, obviously it's not like him directly creating jobs.
Back jobs, right?
Yeah, but prime age employment is higher than it was under Trump's term, right? Like there are a lot of jobs. It's not just bounce back jobs. He created more jobs on average, like every month, than like Trump did as well. So,
well, our unemployment rates are still basically the same between the last two terms. It was 3.5 under Trump, 3.4 under Biden.
Sure.
Unless they win.
Well, I mean, if you count here's what I think is the.
Because that just shows who's not working.
What'd you say? Sorry.
I said, isn't that going to be the most important number, or the number that you would focus on the most, because that shows the amount that's unemployed, and you want that to be as low as possible?
I don't know if that's the most important number.
It was the same under Biden and Trump. It was 3.5 under Trump, 3.4 under Biden. So he was slightly
over what time?
Better.
Under Biden, under Biden, unemployment was under 4% for I think 27 months straight, which is the longest it's ever been that way in in 50 years. Like that's a very impressive record. Also, Trump did have low unemployment, but obviously during COVID it increased like 20%. It just seems like. And also prime age employment under Biden has been higher than it was under Trump.
Prime age, is that kind of like
the prime age employment to population ratio? People aged 25 to 54 is higher. Actually, I think it decreased slightly in October because we had that bad jobs report and stuff. But it decreased a little bit. But it was at 80.9 last month. It reached a peak of 80.6 under Trump before, obviously falling due to COVID.
That's my point. There's not too much of a difference between employment rates between both administrations, right? It's not a vast difference.
I think if you look at monthly jobs, there is actually a decent difference.
Didn't also the middle class family income raise on average $6,000 during Trump's 4 years?
Yeah, but Trump didn't have the negative effects of COVID. He only had that during his last year.
Yeah, with COVID with the last year.
The last year, the tail from March 2020 to January 2021, Biden has to deal with the prolonged negative effects of it.
A whole year. It started in January, but then things started closing down in beginning of March. I think it was
so it feels like Trump had 3 good years for that. I don't know. I don't know if Biden.
Yeah,
if that's fair.
So if you take
here's a question: Do you think there's any?
Do
you think there's any developed country doing better than us right now in terms of post-COVID recovery?
The only two that you could compare to is Canada and Japan for G7 countries.
I mean, even we have
doing comparatively better than us.
Comparatively better? How so?
So I think inflation, and I think they're employment and energy rates, which I was reading.
I mean, I know like real GDP growth in the U.S. is higher than both of those countries.
I said, you said, is there anyone that can contest like inflation or just overall doing like the best after COVID? And I said,
well, yeah, I said overall.
I just wanted to us is Canada and Japan.
Comparable?
And
how so?
True. Those are the only
you said
two
inflation
like that are close to what we're doing, better in some markers, or like that are comparable to what we're doing. As Canada and Japan.
Okay, I mean, it like. I know U.S. GDP, real GDP, inflation-adjusted GDP, is higher here than the growth rates are higher than in the other G7 nations. Even per capita is higher. I think Australia was beating us for a little bit, but I think we're higher now. Like and we managed to bring inflation down. Inflation is at like it depends how you measure it, like 2.6% right now. But unemployment is still pretty low. Unemployment is at like 4.1%. Do you think that's impressive at all?
Oh, no, I do think we are improving. I never said we're not.
Well, not just like improving, but doesn't it seem like if we were able to bring inflation back down from like a peak of 9%, whilst keeping unemployment low, again, unemployment low, it was under 4% for like 27 months. The lowest it's been in 50 years, right? Mm-hmm. Doesn't it kind of seem like Biden's policies might have... The American Rescue Plan might have stimulated job growth, like.
Oh no, I do think he did have some positive effects that are helping us now. I also do think he didn't handle things in the best of spending ways. I mean, if you look at the height of our inflation, which was in 2022, which was like 8%. If you look at most developed and first world countries, we had the highest inflation compared to the majority of them.
Yeah, I think we had the highest peak.
Obviously, something was going wrong. Either it was spending, Biden's policies during COVID at the beginning were having a negative effect on us. Because, I mean, if you want to compare us to all the other countries that were doing better now, also compare us to all the other countries where we're at our worst. How are they doing when we're at our worst?
Well, I think they might.
We had one of the highest inflations compared to most all first world and developed countries during 2022.
I think we had higher inflation, but I also think we have higher growth and higher employment levels. It depends on how you measure unemployment. I don't know for Japan, but like Canada's unemployment rate is 6.5%. Like,
yeah, but I mean, I'm saying, yeah, you could, depending on how you're going to analyze it. But I'm saying if you want to just talk about inflation during that, because that's an easy marker to look at.
Well, I don't know why
2022.
Yeah, again, I agree. Inflation was higher here. It wasn't significantly higher. It was higher here than it was in a lot of other countries. Japan does have a lower unemployment rate than us, although it seems like they've had a lot lower unemployment rates for a while. I agree, like inflation.
My only point is because you could give Biden credit for how we're recovering from COVID, but also give him the credit that he didn't do as well for 2 years that helped in.
Okay, yeah.
My AirPod. Oh wait, I could just go on speaker. Can you hear me fine? Or
yeah. You're good, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, literally my AirPods died. I have some cheap AirPods. My only thing is, if you're gonna give credit to Biden for having our economy improve with his policies the past 2 years, and also give him credit for not handling it correctly either the first 2 years or the amount of spending that caused either the increase in inflation compared to other countries. Because if you're going to compare us now to the countries that were improving, also compare us to the countries when we're at our worst, and we're doing a lot worse than most first world and developed countries.
When it comes to inflation, there are trade-offs, right? Like inflation might have been higher, but that might have led to more long-term growth, as I think it probably did.
So how would you analyze that?
You do... I mean, you can do a few different things. I don't know. I'm sure. I don't know if I studies on this, but I mean, like we can see that U.S. GDP growth is higher and inflation came down sooner for us than other countries. Like I think I probably have that graph saved somewhere. I can try to find it.
So what about other first world and developed countries that inflation didn't increase as much during those times?
I mean, like Germany had less.
They were doing something better that we weren't.
No, I think they're doing worse. Like Germany has lower inflation, but Germany's GDP is literally flat. It's flat. Like there is no economic growth there. Like
Germany had higher inflation than us.
Did Germany have higher inflation? I don't know. I know Germany's GDP is flat. Germany might have had lower inflation, but or higher inflation.
No.
But there are a lot of countries.
Germany
The UK, I'm pretty sure the UK had lower inflation, right? Like
UK had higher. No, UK was higher. But if you look at like Canada, Japan, China, more like first world developed countries, I think Switzerland.
Yeah, but like it seems like a lot of these countries have stagnated growth-wise, or not, at least not been as fast. But America seems to be doing pretty well when it comes to growth, like, and when it comes to, again, like prime age employment. I think it's a big thing. I don't know other countries' prime age employment rate, but
the only point I'm saying is if you give him credit for things being bad, now you also have to put blame on him for when things were bad.
I give him partial.
The whole.
Yeah.
It's always just like which I mean, I appreciate you giving partial, but when I ever talk to people, it's anytime bring up anything about Biden in the last 4 years, it's the same excuse every single time. COVID this, bipartisan border bill this, none of it's his fault, none of it's his reckless spending, none of it's cutting executive order, it's never like ever his fault. And then people are like, oh yeah, like I could admit when I don't like shit that Trump does, like the universal shit, universal tariffs, but I just want people to at least realize that maybe he didn't do the best of job as you think he did, and now we're improving, which is good, but he did not do the best of job as you want to make it seem, and that's just because you want to support your political candidate and kind of be like more one-sided.
I don't think the president has a lot of direct control over inflation. I think the American Rescue Plan was partially responsible for inflation, but I do also think that a lot of negative supply side shocks from COVID were partially responsible for inflation. And I think the American Rescue Plan is partially responsible for our job recovery, for the fact that Americans' real wages are higher now than they ever have been. They're the highest in history. Prime age employment is at all-time highs. Like, even, yeah.
Oh no, like I said, I agree that things are improving now. All I'm saying is you give them now, you have to give them some blame back then. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, yes, prime age employment has consistently been improving.
No, but I'm saying, obviously, I know that the president doesn't have direct control over inflation, but he does. There is things that he can implement that will either increase it or decrease it. Obviously, he doesn't have total control over it, and there's a lot of other factors that contribute to it. I'm saying they do play a part in it. That's my point.
Yeah, but I guess, like, would you give the American Rescue Plan any credit for the fact that, like, real consumption is perfectly on trend for the U.S.? Like we had a dip in 2020, but it's right back on trend. That's not something you see in other countries. Like, real
I'll be
personal.
completely honest, I haven't looked too much into the American Rescue Plan, but if you're saying it does, you seem like you're being transparent, so I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, it seems logical that, like, government stimulus is probably going to have a positive impact on consumer spending. Yeah, and like, you know, what's crazy is that real GDP is higher now than it was projected to be in 2019 before COVID. So, like, not only did we recovered in terms of GDP, we recovered so hard that we're actually better than we thought we would be before COVID even happened. That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I guess, like, here are, like, the 4 big things to be transparent. Like, these aren't things I came up with. These are what economists say. There's an economist, no opinion, that I'm, like, quoting here. I guess, like, the 4 things is that we want out of the economy: high employment rates, low and stable inflation rates. You want fast wage growth, and you want fast productivity growth. It seems like right now the U.S. is doing all of those really well. Unemployment's really low. Inflation is a little high, but it's relatively stable. Even if it's a little sticky, it's relatively stable. See, we have fast labor productivity growth. I think which is really good. And wage growth has been fast the whole time. Now, it was outpaced by inflation for a fair amount of time, But now wage growth is outpacing inflation again, which is why real wages are higher now than they ever have been in U.S. history. I give the American Rescue Plan partial credit for that.
Okay. No, I agree with you.
Yeah, and I think another important thing is that, like, relative to other economic recoveries, it seems like wage growth has been strong, GDP growth has been strong. It took us a really long time to recover from the 2008 crisis. It did not take us that long to recover from this one, which I think is a pretty good sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we just got to get companies to stop price gouging. We'll see how that goes.
You playing to the greedflation thing? Are we?
Huh?
You what company is price gouging? I mean, I think there's some that engage in a little, but like,
even though like the average the inflation rate is down, I know inflation means the amount of prices rising over time, but
yeah, it's
a lot of people thought that since it went up so high that when it went down lower, that prices would decrease first before starting to raise again.
Oh,
inflation just means the amount of
the rate at which prices are increasing. Yeah,
increases. Yeah. So I guess because was this the first time that we saw it was like our highest increase in inflation in how many years?
And since 1980.
So it was like 45 years.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I guess a lot of people's minds, since obviously me and you weren't alive yet, I'm assuming, and then a lot of people thought when it go down, prices were going to decrease at least a little bit because it was such a dramatic increase.
Well, I think the biggest reason Kamala Harris lost is because voters don't understand that. Yeah, they don't understand inflation. Disinflation just means the rate at which prices are increasing stop going up as much. A lot of Americans want deflation, prices to actually go down. Now, there are reasons why on a macroeconomic level you might not want that, but...
Yeah. I think maybe that's what people kind of get confused, because they think when inflation increases that prices will decrease.
Yeah. But I guess seems like we mostly agree there then. It's just like I will give Biden some responsibility for the inflation. I don't think it was probably less than 50% goes to Biden. A lot of it goes to the Fed. A lot of it goes to negative effects from COVID, supply side things. But I also do think the recovery would not have been as strong without the American Rescue Plan. I think doing a bunch of stimulus during COVID was the right decision. Even when Trump did it, I think Trump doing the spending bills was also the right decision. Yeah, it seems like that's a big factor for why the economy seems to be generally good now.
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree with you. My only point is, I'm glad as if you're going to give them credit for us recovering now, you have to give them some blame of when things were bad, and whatever percent you want to put on that, you have to put at least, I don't know what percent that would be good, but as long as you're acknowledging that some of his spending was bad. And I know the Fed is another thing, but at the end of the day, because I know, let me give you an example, because I know Trump has like a bunch of cabinet picks. Some I disagree with. Now, if those cabinet picks do bad, you're going to be like, oh, well, Trump nominated the wrong person. Now, do you think that correlates at all to the Federal Reserve when the president nominates them and they're doing a poor job that's causing us to do bad? Are you going to put some of the blame on the president that nominated them?
I like the Federal Reserve is a unique institution, so like that's why Biden is willing to nominate the same guy that Trump did, because it's meant to be politically independent. You don't usually like play games with that. I mean, it's possible, yeah. Like if there's a bad Fed chairman, I would say like, man, we shouldn't have nominated this guy to the head as the chairman or whatever. There is a mechanism for the federal board governors to remove him if they don't like him. Which seems like that'd be preferable to. I think if the Federal Reserve chairman was actually doing like a actual bad job and not just like a policy disagreement, like there's plenty of policy disagreements I have with the Fed. I feel like they would just remove him internally in the Fed. They wouldn't have, the president wouldn't have to do anything. I would not blame the president that much, but if there was an absurdly bad Fed chairman, then I would. Okay,
but you get my kind of like correlation. Obviously, I know the Fed is independent. but you gotta get my correlation. If you're gonna blame like Trump for some of his cabinet picks, and if they do a poor job, then you have to at least, I don't know. That's just kind of like my reference of, you get what I'm saying, so I don't need to repeat it. But
yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's all I have on the economy, unless there's anything else you wanted to bring up.
I don't think so.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to discuss, or?
We can. I have to go soon, but like you said in DMs, you want to talk about trans kids a little bit. I don't know how much we're going to disagree on this one, but.
Oh, because I mean, I just want to know kind of like your point of view, because I've talked to people on this, and I'm against, obviously, kids consenting to gender affirming care. I don't think they are old enough to be doing that because they don't know the effects on their body. And I kind of, whenever I talk to people that are either liberal, they kind of just take whatever their side and they just believe everything. Like, that's just kind of their thing. Like, they're just super one-sided. So I just kind of wanted to know your take on it.
I mean, like, I think there are plenty of Democrats that go into really cringe areas on the trans shit. I think Republicans way overblow it, though. Like, the Nancy Mace stuff, to me, seems insane. That seems like an actual case of, you know, TDS, trans derangement syndrome. I've coined that term.
Okay.
I guess, like, I'm fine with children taking puberty blockers, so long as they are, like, one, receiving, like, concurrent mental health counseling, because I think a lot of people who are, you know, claim to be trans or whatever are probably just experiencing, like, mental health issues. So as long, you know, they can take puberty blockers because I don't believe they have super negative effects, and they should receive like concurrent mental counseling, and then they should probably be enrolled in like longer term studies. Like, they probably should have to consent to like researching stuff. I think that's how most of Europe does it now. It's like, if you accept this care, you have to consent to like being part of like a research group, so we know what the longer term effects are. But I do think there are genuine cases of gender dysphoria that need to be treated. They should just also, they shouldn't medically transition. They should just have puberty blockers, essentially.
Okay. So you don't think puberty blockers have like negative effects?
I want to say they have no negative effects. The like negative effects I've seen is they might lead to a temporary decrease or a permanent decrease in height and a permanent decrease in bone density. But like the other stuff seems to be like temporary decreases in like, you know, intelligence. It catches up once you are allowed to actually hit puberty, and that naturally you get more intelligent. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, more likely to cause someone to lead to osteoporosis. That's why whenever someone is on puberty blockers, they are subscribed, I forgot the prescription, to basically prevent from the lower bone mineral density decreasing and bone growth from decreasing, because those are effects that lead to osteoporosis. I've talked to a lot of detransitioners that have gone through this. They are now took a God, I can't even fucking say the word.
Fertility?
They're infertile now. Yeah.
Oh, infertile.
They're infertile now. Yeah, they took a test. They are no longer able to do that, and that's been shown that puberty blockers can lead to infertility.
I mean, just like, I don't disagree that puberty blockers can lead to infertility, but the stuff I've seen suggests that that's rare and only happens if you take them for a number of years. Like, usually they tend to be reversible in the fertility thing. It's my understanding. Yeah,
once you start talking to a lot of people in the detransition community, because they kind of get shunned because it kind of doesn't fit
the woke narrative.
Either a narrative that they're trying to purport, you'll kind of realize that they won't even do studies showing it, because it's going to go against whatever narrative they're trying to purport, which I think is kind of sad. And also,
well, we've been using puberty blockers for years to prevent like early puberty, precocious puberty. So we do have some long-term studies on puberty blockers themselves. We just don't have like long-term studies on how good is it for people with gender dysphoria. What are the long-term effects of that?
One, you're treating a medical necessity, and one, you're treating a mental illness, right?
Well, that's probably where we're going to disagree the most. I think there are probably genuine cases of like, you know, this person, when they were a fetus or whatever, they're fucking, you know, their brain got fucked up and they feel their gender identity aligns more with the sex of the opposite gender. And in those cases, it seems like we should probably just fucking let them transition when they're a child. We should probably keep them on puberty blockers so they don't go through the wrong puberty and end up with like permanent negative effects to make them feel dysphoric all the time. Seems like this is my general feeling on it.
So do you know a lot about like gender dysphoria or anything?
It's not like I've done a ton of research onto it, but no.
So let me ask you this, just like a broader question. Do you think you could diagnose a 6-year-old with gender dysphoria?
I mean, you could diagnose them with like having traits associated with gender dysphoria. That doesn't necessarily mean that you like immediately medically transition them. That just means like, hey, maybe we should be worried about this. We should maybe get them into mental counseling. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you kind of know like the steps of it at all?
What do you mean the steps of it?
So first someone gets gender dysphoria diagnosed. That allows them in the majority of states in the U.S. to now either if they decide to get puberty blockers, that usually lasts for about 2 to 3 years. Then they are suggested after puberty blockers to go on hormone replacement therapy. And as anyone knows, messing with your hormones lead to a significant amount of personality or bipolar disorder. And then after that, it's also, obviously all these are optional, but then it's suggested to do gender reassignment surgery. And those are basically like the 4 steps.
Yeah, sure.
I guess,
I'm familiar with that. Sure. I guess I don't know if I would support anything beyond just puberty blockers before you turn 18 or whatever, and you should have parental consent even for the whatever puberty blockers like.
Okay, I think honestly, even though I'll disagree with that, I actually think that is because my whole thing is I like to come to a middle ground with people that have opposing beliefs. That's like even like abortion, I could come with a middle ground with you in like 2 seconds that you would more than likely agree with, or at least be like, okay, maybe I could be on board with that.
Yeah, actually, we probably agree on abortion more than you think. What's your abortion position? I'm curious.
My abortion is here at the end of the day. I think you're killing a baby, whatever, and whatever you think the baby doesn't have value yet, whatever makes you feel like it's less of a baby to whatever the decision. But at the end of the day, everyone should be able to do whatever they want with their body. So if I had to make like from a policy standpoint on a good middle ground, the exceptions are always the exceptions federally. So rape, incest, and life of the mother, that's not even in contest.
Yeah.
And I do think that it's such like I personally think it's not a good act. So I would do it where each woman that just wants to get it, they are allowed to get one in their lifetime, and it's tied to their Social Security. Because I feel like you're making a mistake. And once you make that mistake once, you're not going to want to make it again. But the exceptions remain always the exceptions. That one is paid for by your insurance or the state, so it never comes out of pocket. And it has to be before a certain week. And I think a good week, in my preference, is either 10 to 12 weeks if you had to set a number. That'd be done by, because majority of women don't know they're pregnant till about 5 to 6 weeks. And that gives you another month or month and a half to make this decision.
I mean,
if I'm making a policy that would kind of at least appease some people and appease both sides, that's like from a policy standpoint that I would implement.
Yeah, I mostly agree with that. I think to me, like, sentience is what matters, so it's not just humans that matter. Like, I agree, you're killing a living human organism. I just think the only reason living human organisms have value is because they also have a high level of sentience. I also think that animal sentience, to a lesser extent, not nearly as much as humans, matters as well. That's why I don't think you should be able to like torture animals. Sentience seems intuitive to matter for me, so I would agree. Up until the point where the fetus is sentient, you should be able to get an abortion, with the exception of, I mean, life of the mother, obviously, rape and incest, probably. I think we'd probably mostly agree there.
So your cutoff is just 20 weeks instead of 10, right?
I don't know enough about fetal sentience to give you a good answer.
Well, I'm guessing your argument is when they have consciousness, right? That's usually the main argument.
Sentience, which is a little bit different than consciousness, but yeah, sentience. When they have reached sentience, which I don't think there's any possibility at all that happening before 8 weeks, any at all, and then like it's unlikely before 12 weeks, and maybe even not until 20 weeks or whatever. But
okay, now would you agree that if you would restrict it to one per person for their lifetime, besides the rare exceptions?
No, I mean generally, I believe you should be able to do what you want with your own body, so long as it doesn't harm another sentient being. So, like in my view, abortion is just it's control of your own body, and before X amount of time, you're not harming any other sentient being. You're just getting rid of a living human organism that's not sentient in your body, which is why I'm fine with people doing as many as they want, at least insofar as they're not like external effects.
Sentient?
What
so
did
if
you
you're
say,
making
sorry?
a policy, when is the being sentient? So say you're coming and you're making a policy, because you would have to decide this. So I mean, you can't just be like,
Yeah,
you just believe morality is based on, that's kind of like your moral compass, and that's fine. So if you were to make a policy out of it,
I really don't have a good answer for fetal sentience, because I've seen conflicting things from people I all trust. I would put it at fucking 12 weeks, which is like before, when like 80% of abortions happen anyway, so I'm not like too upset about that. That's where I would put it at, but there could be cases
so
made for.
We basically agree, and I just think it should be limited to like one, and
Yeah.
you just think it should be as. That's fine. Like I said, I understand everyone. Like, if you want to do whatever you want with your body, at the end of the day, I still think it's wrong. But who am I to tell people they're doing something wrong?
Sure.
But it's also hard when you just like hear about it. You're just like, oh, it's kind of sad. Like, I don't know. It's like a double-edged sword. I think it's.
Yo, it's no. It could be. I don't know. I don't know enough about fetal sentience.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Your thing was cut out.
I was just talking to chat.
You're
If I
talking to
mute,
someone else?
I'm talking to people. I'm responding to people in my chat.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah. I guess
Yeah.
So here's one thing I do want to go over before we part ways.
Yeah.
How do you feel about like Jack Smith not being able to continue his prosecutions because Trump has been elected president? Like,
didn't he resign, or did
he hasn't resigned yet, but
one pursue him?
Yeah, because he's not really allowed to. Yeah, the one case has already been dismissed. The documents case is also probably going to be dismissed. I guess how do you?
But he wasn't forced to, is what I'm saying, right? Is that what you said? He was.
He wasn't.
He wasn't forced to do it. It's something that he elected to do. Right.
So
and you could speculate on the reasons why, but he wasn't forced to, is what I'm saying.
He isn't forced to discontinue them now, but you can't prosecute a sitting president, so he would just have to stop before or once Trump got elected. So there's that. And then 2, Trump said that he was going to fire Jack Smith within 2 seconds, right? So
oh, really? I didn't even hear that.
Yeah, Trump does not like Jack Smith because Jack Smith is, prosecuting him.
Jack Smith, that's the one from New York, right?
No, Jack Smith is the federal one. So the election subversion case, the January 6th case, and the documents case, the Mar-a-Lago case.
Got it. He's not part of the committee that who was the committee that found
the January
Trump
6th Select Committee?
There wasn't election interference or something in favor of Trump.
Oh, the Mueller report. That
was it. The Mueller report? I thought it was
the Mueller report was about Russia, the Russiagate stuff.
You know his 34 felony charge where they said that was
the New York case. Yeah, the New York case.
Yeah, the New York case. There's an organization, I think it was an NGO that looks at election integrity, and they found that there actually wasn't election interference from those 34 felony counts. Right? I'm trying to remember the name.
What, of the case or the NGO?
NGO.
I mean, I like
where they found that there wasn't election interference, and that was like a big thing of why they moved his misdemeanor to a felony count.
Well, it's because he was falsifying business records. The New York case is the one I care the least about. I care way more, infinitely more about the Jan 6 case, which is what I really want to get to. But my understanding is that the reason, this is a talking point I can give to you, okay? The reason he was charged with felony in New York was because he was falsifying business records in commission of another crime. Now, a lot of people get upset because the exact crime that he was covering up wasn't specified, and people screech about that. But like at the end of the day, so I think one of them was like not election interference, but just like tax fraud. But like at the end of the day, like he was given a trial, he was given chances to appeal. The jury found him guilty. Like I'm gonna, you know,
isn't he appealing that right now in the appellate court?
Yeah, I think it's already, the sentencing was already like dismissed or whatever. Like they're not going to sentence him because he was elected president. Yeah. The Mar-a-Lago case is in appeals right now too. Yeah. But I guess so here's a question. Do you think there's probable cause that Trump committed conspiracy to either defraud the United States or conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding with all the things about Jan 6?
I'll be completely transparent. I don't know, because I don't know a lot about January 6th. But if you want to know my thoughts on January 6th as a whole, I kind of, obviously I disagree with that. No one should be storming the Capitol or breaking in. And I think that was like a horrible act. So I don't condone that at all.
I guess, do you know what the ECA is?
No, I don't.
So there's this law called the Electoral Count Act. It basically goes over how the electoral vote is certified on January 6th. Basically, Trump and his lawyers had a lot of different plans. All those plans failed. So the days before Jan 6th, they basically had one option left. It was for Pence to break the Electoral Count Act. This is not in dispute. Yeah, Pence said it was going to break the Electoral Count Act. John Eastman said it was going to break the Electoral Count Act. Kenneth Chesebro said it was going to break the Electoral Count Act. Everyone knew this broke the Electoral Count Act. Eastman thought it was okay to break the Electoral Count Act because he thought it was unconstitutional. What they wanted Pence to do was break the Electoral Count Act, which is breaking federal law, and have Mike Pence not certify the vote from the 7 swing states. And eventually the end result would be it would be thrown to the House delegation, and the House delegation would, in theory, elect Trump. There are a few different ways to get to the House delegation, but that was the plan, is to get it to the House delegation. I guess, in my view, there's no good reason to think that the Electoral Count Act is unconstitutional. John Eastman himself, initially there was a lawyer, Kenneth Chesebro, who said, like, you know, my plan is to have Pence break the ECA. And John Eastman said, the ECA isn't unconstitutional like you think. But then a few days before January 6th, when all their other plans had failed, Eastman suddenly said, actually, you know what? Maybe the ECA is unconstitutional. He said that they would lose 9-0 in the Supreme Court. There was the 2022 ruling where Judge Cannon went over this and said, like, there's no good reason to believe the ECA is unconstitutional. There was a ruling, Wisconsin Voters Alliance v. Pence, just days before January 6th, where people were suing Mike Pence to have them not certify to vote. And they said the ECA is constitutional. There was a ruling in 1877 that said the ECA was constitutional. So in my view, if you're telling your vice president to break federal law to stop the certification of the vote, that is most definitely probable cause to investigate you for a conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding. And I think it's very unfortunate Jack Smith won't be able to continue with that case.
No, I totally see where you come from. By the way, that's like probably the one thing that I just dislike about Trump the most was all the January 6th stuff.
Sure.
I think that was just, I don't know. And I think one thing that bothered me is that I think it was like years later he still wouldn't admit that
he still won't admit that he lost the election.
I was just like, dude, at this point you're hurting yourself more. Like, at least just fucking lie if you don't believe it, just to like come on. I was just like, you're making yourself look worse. So that was something that I didn't like, to be honest with you.
I mean, yeah, it's yeah, and then there's the documents case I care less about, but I think that's also, I guess, do you have any issues with what he did with the documents?
The 34 count?
No, that was the New York charge. Oh. The federal Mar-a-Lago documents case, the fact that he willfully retained classified documents at Mar-a-Lago and obstructed the investigation into it.
I'll be honest with you, I didn't even know this.
Okay. Well, here's Trump is charged with a few different things.
Now, any of these charges you think he's getting convicted on?
Well, not anymore.
Yeah.
I think it was highly likely that he would have been convicted on the Mar-a-Lago case, because we literally had him on tape saying, you know, I could have declassified these, but I didn't. So, like, that's kind of dead to rights there. We have, like, multiple people who testify that, like, yeah, Trump told me to lie to NARA. We have all the NARA National Archives, NARA, as National Archives and Records Association or Administration, I think, who asked for the classified documents back. Trump did not do it. Later, Trump told his lawyers to lie to NARA, which is why he's charged with obstruction. In the Mar-a-Lago case, he probably would have got convicted. In the January 6th case, probably would have got convicted. I'm a little bit less confident in that one, just because there's more things you have to prove, but he probably would have been convicted. The Georgia RICO case, there's a good chance he would have been convicted, and that's probably the one I'm least confident in, but.
Do you think just the Mar-a-Lago one is like kind of the main one? It seems.
Well, I think that's the one he had the highest chance of being convicted of. I think, to me, the classified document itself does not matter nearly as much as January 6th.
Got it. Were you going to vote for Harris regardless? Like, were you voting blue no matter who it was?
I mean, essentially,
like say Trump wasn't running and it was someone else. Like, were you going blue no matter what?
Probably. I like that. Like, you know, even without Trump, I'm probably more aligned with all the Democratic policies than with the Republican Party policies. It's hard to know what the Republican Party would look like without Trump, but.
Because I voted for Biden in 2020.
Based.
And then before that, I didn't vote when it was Hillary or Trump. So I said, I'm not voting for any of these. And then before that, no, I think Biden was the first one I voted for. Yeah. And then I wanted Obama, but I didn't vote. Yeah.
Did you down ballot like any Democrats in your state or local races, or did you do Republican all the way?
This year, I think I just did Republican in my state for what was it for? God, I can't remember. That makes me sick. I only voted for like two things. I voted for like 2 props, presidency, and like one Republican. I just didn't fill out I didn't fill it out because I also feel bad. Like if I'm not too informed about the other ones, then I just feel weird voting for them.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know. I mean, you could decide what level of informed you have to be to vote. That's a different topic, but yeah, I didn't do Republican all the way down.
You know, I actually wrote in Joe Biden for one of my local elections, just because there was like there was an uncontested race. It was like, you know, soil and water commissioner, and it was literally one person. And I'm like, well, there's a write-in option. I'm going to write in Joe Biden, and I won't feel bad about it because the guy's still going to win. He's running uncontested. Like,
oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything else you did, or?
I was going to give just something to think about because I know we just glazed over it. The gender dysphoria thing. I want you to just know how easy it is to maybe just to kind of change your perspective on it. I want you to know how easy it is to diagnose someone with it, because that was the field I was in, and that's partially why I left the field I was in. I'm sure if you know. Do you know what unspecified gender dysphoria is?
No.
So all it is so in the DSM-5 you have gender dysphoria as a diagnosis. If you unspecified means they don't meet the full criteria of the diagnosis of gender dysphoria, so you diagnose them with unspecified gender dysphoria. So for the vast majority of people with mental illness are diagnosed with unspecified either depression disorder, unspecified anxiety disorder, which by definition means they don't meet the criteria for the disorder.
Okay.
But that doesn't change the treatment at all. So say there's someone that goes in and gets diagnosed with unspecified gender dysphoria. They go through mental health. They don't need to get reevaluated to actually meet the criteria of the diagnosis. And unspecified gender dysphoria still allows them to start puberty blockers, still allows them to get hormone replacement therapy, because they don't differentiate the two at all. And another problem is insurance. In majority of states, if you're going through insurance for mental health care, they have to diagnose. Like, you can't get...
Oh, sure, yep.
You can't keep receiving, so they'll give out these diagnoses because, one, they have to, and two, they'll be giving it to people that may not even have anything. Maybe they're just experiencing some sort of emotional deregulation or stuff of that nature, and it's being expressed in a certain way, and they'll give them this diagnosis. So just to open your mind maybe a little bit and other people's mind, that it's so easy to give someone this diagnosis, and that diagnosis, in my opinion, is a precursor that allows them to get a treatment that more often than not they don't need.
Okay. Well, you want to plug yourself one more time?
Yeah, so my name's Daniel. My socials are Brutally Honest Help on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. I don't post as much as I should be. Honestly, if you're watching this, you probably wouldn't like my posts, but that's completely fine. I'm a wellness coach. I focus on people's physical health because I believe that's the main contributor to your mental health. Just food for thought. Anyone wonder if they're ever suffering with anything of like depression, or they feel like they're depressed or anxious? 5 things to look at first: your water intake, your sun intake, your sleep quality, how much exercise, and your nutrition. Until you get those 5 in order, once you get those 5 in order, I truly believe your mental health will improve. And that's usually the message I try to give everyone. And yeah, I just want to say thank you for having me on. I appreciate the conversation. I
for sure
learned some things that I didn't know, and I felt we had a respectful conversation. And hopefully I brought up a few points that you're like, oh, well, I could kind of see his point, or maybe something that you have to go back and like, oh, I'll think about that a little bit more. And
sure.
Hopefully I at least achieved that. And that's my closing statement.
Yeah, think you did. Thanks for coming on. Anything that you want me to link in the description, just send me the link to it, and I'll link it all. Yeah.
You just put like my Insta handle or TikTok. It's just Brutally Honest Help.
Okay.
For everything. If you want to put that, then yeah.
All right, yeah. Well, thanks for coming on. I will
all right, man. Have a
see
good
you
night.
later. Yep, you too.
Yeah.
Big win. I'm assuming Sample or Isaac or someone is gonna hop in, so let me know what I can do. There's gotta be a better way. What's up?
What's up? How's it going? How do you
Good.
feel about the discussion?
I think it was good. I think I had fun. I think I don't know, like he has studies on like how big the impact of like of tariffs are in prices, and it's like, well, I haven't like read the study, but like
not the most important thing. Like,
I know, but I was just
I
like,
don't care about the price level if wages increase faster. It's just like
exactly. I was like even if it's a small price increase, which by the way, I think it's for goods affected, as in like used imports, because like we didn't. Like most of the studies are on like retail prices. Like we didn't tariff retail products. We tariffed like steel.
Intermediate goods. Yeah.
Yeah, we tariffed like inputs. So like I'm assuming it. Yeah, obviously because they're a small component of the overall price of these goods. It's going to be a small component. The price increase is going to be small, but like the small price increase is just accompanied by like no benefit. It's like. It doesn't protect jobs. It decreases productivity. Like you're not doing anything good.
Exactly. That's what I think should be harped on. It's the fact that like the price thing is not the most important thing. It's definitely real. And even in that study, they say the pass-through rate is massive for the importers, right? So you do hurt like the people who like you can just reason directly that it will harm jobs, right? If I'm in a business that imports a lot of steel and the pass-through rate is almost perfect, right? For a 20% increase, it was like 18.5 or something. So it's almost 100% pass-through rate, right? Like obviously it's gonna harm jobs in that sector, and that sector far outnumbers other like the sectors that produce steel. So you can just very easily reason into that. I think you did fine. I just think you should have harped more on the fact that it does destroy jobs. That like there is very rarely you can make a case. That's not the case Trump is making. That's not the case he has made, and that's not what he will do. And so that's bad. With Biden, even I think it was an overreach. And even then, like whatever, like it's just not. It's just like it should be harped on. I don't know. Like it's nuanced in the same way that like seatbelts are not universally good. It can choke you, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, but
it's pretty good. Seatbelts are pretty good. Yeah.
I'm scrolling my Twitter timeline, and I just got this picture of a book, on my Twitter timeline.
Oh, really?
Educating the retarded child. So
Whoa,
I wonder.
Probably a lot of funny people copy that image.
Yeah, probably a lot of funny people DM their friends that. Yeah,
a lot of funny, tall, handsome people copy that image. Yeah, it's probably the case. Well, look, what am I supposed to do? Also, I don't think he was retarded. I was just joking. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know. Also, the trans stuff. That's what the fuck. I mean, for one, it's not a problem. It's not a big problem. Like so many. It affects so few people. Who the fuck? Why are we talking about that? Why are we not talking about like school shootings or something? Right? Like that also doesn't affect a lot of people, right? So like, why are we talking about one and not the other? It's dumb to me. Second thing, puberty blockers are not affecting fertility. It's just not. It's HRT that affects fertility. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's very basic, and they're reversible. So I just don't like whatever. It's like, do we think like no one should be below 18 and get any puberty blockers or HRT? Like, are we just like forcing them to go through the wrong puberty and kill themselves at like age 22? Like, what are we doing? Like, I don't know. I don't get it. But yeah, I don't know. Fun convo overall. The guy's reasonable. He's like not a Trump craze. What would you call lunatic?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. What do you? Oh yeah. I mean, I gotta go to my macro lecture in like 2 hours. Hey, caramba. But whatever. Yeah. So when are you gonna end stream?
Pretty soon after you leave. I don't have anything else for today. I think I just need to.
You didn't tell him to donate to the shrimp charity.
Oh, my bad.
I'm gonna scold you for that. No, I'm joking. But yeah, think of it. $1. What can $1 buy you? Like
you can't donate $1. You have to donate at least $5.
Oh really? Damn.
Yeah, I typed in $1 and I said no, you can't do that. It said $5 minimum. We're like, okay, fuck it.
Yeah, it can buy you like bananas or something, right? And also, it can buy you saving. What is it like?
Whatever, 1,500 times 5. Yeah.
Agonizing death. That's good. Well, it's not saving them from death. It's saving them from suffering.
From suffering, yeah.
Or like from their eyes being gouged out or whatever to be more fertile. Crazy stuff. Very inhumane. But yeah, I don't know.
Wait, what the fuck?
What do you think the best healthcare system is? Like,
Wait, no, go back to the gouging their eyes out for them to be more fertile? What the fuck?
That was in the article I sent you.
I didn't read the whole article. I didn't know they did that. That's insane.
Oh, here, let me read the relevant part. Here we go. They also secure welfare commitments from corporations to stop crushing the eyes of live shrimp in order to increase their fertility and use the humane slaughter. And use humane slaughter. They do that. They crush their eyes for them to be more fertile. I don't know how that works, but they do it. Pretty bad, pretty cruel, pretty evil, pretty bad thing humanity is doing. And we should kind of not make excuses for it and instead like just be normal and like eat vegan. It seems not demanding. To me. I don't know. But that's just me. Yeah.
Okay, but who is the best healthcare system, you asked?
I mean, I don't know, single payer, multi-payer. I'm a heavily multi-payer film.
I mean, I don't know. I've never done a deep dive. Intuitively, it just seems like, you know, having like a public option, but still with private insurance as an option, just seems intuitively better than just doing like a strict like single payer, government controls everything. Intuitively, that seems better, but like I haven't done too much research into it.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, sure. But goddamn, I don't know. How do we? I don't know. I don't think I was reasonable overall. I just think it's something that annoys me about like the Biden COVID thing. It's like people will be like, "Oh, so you don't like?" People I see saying like the inflation was not really his fault, but the recovery he gets credit for that. And it's funny to me that they give him credit in one place and not the other place.
Yeah.
It's like it may seem to you inconsistent, but like does that mean they're wrong? Like does that mean they're not? Like, can you address the argument instead of like saying you don't like how like the position? Like, I don't know, just address the argument. Like, what's unreasonable about saying like, yeah, he didn't really control inflation, which was a global phenomenon, but the recovery seems to have been more quick because of his policies. Like, I don't know. Seems clear to me. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot. I should have on a trans stuff. I should have just brought up Nancy. I brought up Nancy Mace for a second, and I wanted to get back to it, but I was going to use that as an example. Like, don't you think that like this is just completely unhinged behavior, and like clearly a lot of these people like aren't actually.
And Trump saying he's going to ban transgender people from the military.
Yeah, it's like
again, right? Like this time, actively kick out trans people. Like the last time, I think they just cannot be recruited.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, now it's like this time it's actively kick them. It's just like we're just gonna have a worse military for just virtue signaling. It's gross. It's really gross. It's like unforgivable to me. But yeah. I mean, trying to think if you could have hit anything else. I mean, on the January 6th thing, it's like I always need to mention that we have Pence in 4K in an interview saying Trump asked me to overthrow the election.
Oh, true.
Every Trump voter in 2020 and 2016 voted for Pence as well. So that's the guy you actively wanted to replace Trump if he's president. And he's telling you, he tried to overturn the election. Like, nothing will convince you if this is not it. Like, I don't know. I don't. Just like, but yeah. Also, you should, don't be like the Russia Gate stuff. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Well, I thought like he might know that word.
Yeah, it's like, but don't give him an inch. Don't give him an inch. It's like, maybe, even if he's connected, what does that mean he's wrong? Does that mean, like, let's say Jack Smith was the guy who wrote the Mueller report. Does that mean he's wrong? Does that mean he doesn't have merit? What does that have to do? Maybe he honestly just, like, didn't know who he was, so he just tried to make associations, but, like, even if he is, like, who cares? It's like, we know he's investigated. That's bad. That's really bad. And it's not good that he has immunity now. Also, I think it's kind of obligatory to bring up terminating the Constitution is bad. Do we agree? It's bad.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know at this point. But yeah, I don't know. Why are you not? I don't know. What are you going to debate in the future? Still Trump stuff?
Yeah, I feel like I might do TikTok tariff debates because I feel like I could do some of those.
That's good. Content, that's good. But, yeah.
And then.
Yeah.
I think I don't know. We're gonna keep doing the tariffs.
Oh, another thing.
Some
on
of the
the
Jan
trans
6
thing,
stuff.
I don't think like children should like be having gender affirming care because they don't know the consequences for their body. It's
they don't know the consequences.
That's a bad argument. We let children have antidepressants. We let them have ADHD medication. Like, they don't know what it. Like, they don't. It's not like they're.
It's like their parents still have to consent to it, right? Like.
Yeah. Yeah, and even then, oh my god, I dropped something. Even then, you can make an argument that like as long as it's life saving, that's what I care about. Like, we should just get the data about if it's life saving, because I'm not sure I would value parental consent as much if it means the child is more likely to die. I don't think it's something we should respect very much. But maybe you could make the argument. I don't know. I'm not sure. It's just like a good idea. Like, maybe society could not really tolerate that. I'm just saying it does lead to harm. I don't think like parents who are unreasonable is a good thing. Like, we should really respect. But I don't know. Whatever. That's me. Maybe that's communism, authoritarianism, whatever.
Yeah, you want to trans all the kids, and I can't believe it.
That's right. Well, I want no kids in the first place because I love
Because you love, you love horse shit so much.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah. I'm trying to think if there was anything else. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, the tariff thing. Good job.
Tariff things, and I think we'll do the.
It just seemed like.
Keep
it
doing
seems like
the
you said it's
stuff.
nuanced. And it's like, what the fuck you mean nuanced? It's like tariffs are almost always bad. Like, we have the data on this. You have no data saying otherwise. It's like, whatever. You can only say it's not as bad as we think. It's still bad. We shouldn't do it. It's bad. People want to do it. Yeah, no, that's my take. But yeah, I'm gonna wait. A friend of mine sent me an email. Okay, I'm gonna go now. Bye bye.
If you want to chat with me live, sub here or go to Nonfon420 on Twitch or Kick via the links below. Once again, please like and sub to help with the algorithm, and consider sending a donation through YouTube Super Thanks to directly support me, and I'll make sure to reply to any question you ask. See you guys next time.